Hey folks, so welcome to this live stream of read along session. So as you might have known, if you work in the software development, you might have heard about this book which I am presenting on the screen. It's sort of called classic, and the
The
idea
idea
behind
behind
these
these
sessions
sessions
is
is
pretty
pretty
simple.
simple.
I
I
am
am
getting
getting
myself
myself
to
to
sit
sit
down,
down,
uh, go
go
in a
in a
state
state
of
of
free
free
from
from
distractions of
distractions of
any
any
sorts,
sorts,
and
and
the
the
goal
goal
will
will
be
be
to
to
read
read
along.
along.
So the
So the
reason
reason
I'm
I'm
doing
doing
this
this
is
is
so
so
that I
that I
can
can
actually
actually
deep
deep
dive
dive
into
into
topics,
topics,
not
not
do
do
a
a
speed
speed
read
read
of
of
sorts
sorts
of the
of the
topics,
topics,
and
and
I'm
I'm
able
able
to
to
actually
actually
get
get
into
into
the
the
depth of
depth
the
of the
topics which
topics
are
which are
presented,
presented,
however
however
easy
easy
or
or
complex that
complex that
might be.
might be.
And
And
wherever I
wherever I
get
get
stuck,
stuck,
I'll
I'll
be
be
using
using
Claude or
Claude or
Gemini or
Gemini or
the
the
usual
usual
LLMs
LLMs
to
to
answer my
answer my
questions,
questions,
do a
do a
sort of
sort of
back
back
and
and
forth, and
forth, and
understand
understand
if
if
I
I
am
am
really
really
able
able
to
to
get
get
that
that
topic.
topic.
So,
So,
once
once
again,
again,
welcome to
welcome
the
to the
live
live
stream.
stream.
This is
This is
the
the
first
first
book
book
that I
that
am
I am
starting
starting
with,
with,
and
and
today we
today
will
we
be
will be
doing the
doing the
first
first
chapter of
chapter of
this
this
book.
book.
So,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
let's
let's
get
get
started.
started.
System
System
design
design
interview,
interview,
then
then
it
it
is
is
just
just
about the
about the
experience of
experience
the
of the
author.
author.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh, they have
They have
worked at
worked at
multiple
multiple
tech
tech
giants
giants
and
and
have
have
done
done
masters
masters
from
from
Carnegie
Carnegie
Mellon,
Mellon,
CMU.
CMU.
Okay,
Okay,
let's
let's
move
move
ahead.
ahead.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
this
this
is
is
how
how
the
the
first
first
book is
book is
structured.
structured.
So,
So,
if
if
I may
I may
show,
show,
I
I
think
think
there
there
are
are
two
two
editions of
editions
this
of this
book.
book.
The
The
first
first
one
one
being
being
the
the
one
one
that
that
we
we
are
are
reading
reading
today.
today.
It is
It is
this,
this,
a
a
System
System
Design
Design
Interview
Interview
Volume
Volume
1,
1,
and
and
the
the
second
second
one
one
is
is
there as
there
well.
as well.
And
And
yeah,
yeah,
more
more
on the
on the
second book
second book
later.
later.
But
But
for
for
now,
now,
let's
let's
focus
focus
on
on
the
the
table of
table of
contents of
contents
the
of the
first
first
book.
book.
So,
So,
System
System
Design
Design
Interview,
Interview,
okay.
okay.
Chapter
Chapter
1 is
1
all
is all
about
about
scaling
scaling
from
from
0 to
0 to
million of
million of
users.
users.
Chapter 2
Chapter 2
looks
looks
like
like
it is
it is
more
more
on the
on the
back of
back
the
of the
envelope
envelope
estimation,
estimation
where
where
you
you
do
do
a
a
capacity
capacity
estimation
estimation
about
about
various
various
resources that
resources that
you
you
might
might
need to
need to
allocate
allocate
when
when
given a
given a
situation
situation
in a
in a
system
system
design
design
interview, or
interview, or
when you
when you
try
try
to
to
build it
build
in
it in
a
a
real
real
world
world
scenario.
scenario.
Chapter
Chapter
3
3
sort of
sort of
brings
brings
things
things
together.
together.
By the
By
way,
the way, I am also
I
I
have
have
read the
read the
books in
books in
bits and
bits and
pieces,
pieces,
but
but
I am
I am
trying to
trying to
collate all
collate
of
all
it
of it
and
and
do
do
a
a
combined
combined
effort
effort
where I
where I
finish the
finish the
book
book
and
and
read it
read it
cover to
cover to
cover.
cover.
So,
So
chapter
chapter
3 is
3 is
more
more
about
about
a
a
framework
framework
for
for
system
system
design
design
interviews.
interviews.
Okay,
Okay,
how do
how
you
do you
approach
approach
them?
them?
What
What
questions to
questions to
ask?
ask?
What
What
sort of
sort of
calculations you
calculations
need
you
to
need to
do? I
do? I
think
think
it's
it's
first two
first two
chapters
chapters
are
are
the
the
build up
build up
for
for
that.
that.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
good so
good so
far.
far.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
it
it
is
is
from the
from the
chapter
chapter
4
4
where
where
we
we
actually
actually
start
start
implementing
implementing
real world
real world
systems, or
systems, or
some of
some of
these
these
might
might
be
be
questions that
questions
you
that
might
you
see
might
on
see on
lead
lead
code or
code or
some
some
other
other
places
places
about,
about,
hey,
hey,
I
I
interviewed
interviewed
at
at
XYZ
XYZ
firm
firm
and
and
these were
these were
the
the
things,
things
this
this
system
system
was
was
asked
asked
to
to
me.
me.
So
So
things like
things like
that. So
that. So
there's a
there's a
rate
rate
limiter,
limiter,
then
then
consistent
consistent
hashing,
hashing,
key
key
value
value
store,
store,
then
then
designing a
designing a
unique
unique
ID
ID
generator in
generator in
distributed
distributed
systems.
systems.
This
This
has
has
great
great
applications
applications
for
for
cases such
cases
as
such as
distributed
distributed
logging and
logging and
things like
things like
that.
that.
Okay, so
Okay, so
chapter 8
chapter
is
8 is
about a
about a
URL
URL
shortener.
shortener.
Then
Then
chapter
chapter
9
9
goes
goes
on
on
how to
how to
build a
build a
web
web
crawler.
crawler.
Chapter
Chapter
10,
10,
in
in
fact,
fact,
this was
this was
asked to
asked to
me
me
in an
in an
interview as
interview
well,
as well,
designing a
designing a
notification
notification
system.
system.
So,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
chapter
chapter
11,
11,
design a
design a
newsfeed
newsfeed
system,
system,
design
design
a
a
chat
chat
system for
system for
chapter
chapter
12,
12,
design a
design a
search
search
autocomplete
autocomplete
system,
system,
uh,
uh,
design
design
YouTube,
YouTube,
design
design
Google
Google
overdrive, and chapter 16 sort of an exit, where to go from here, sort of chapter it looks like from the get-go. Also, it looks like a lot of them, like just by seeing the names itself, have you like if you have been diving into backend or things on how do you build systems. A lot of them you might see these are not just limited to building a notification system or just a separate newsfeed system. A lot of the concepts that we are going to read, that we are going to deep dive into, are applicable in multiple various other domains as well. So yeah, with that, let's get started with the chapter one of this book. Just quickly reiterating, I am doing these live streams where I try to cover a chapter, and a collection of those chapters will lead to me covering a book page to page, and in that process trying to understand everything into depth. And if you are someone who have been trying to sit and finish a book or finish a particular chapter, but you get distracted or you're not able to sit through entirety of it, then I would recommend you to maybe just do a read along. So yeah, uh, forward. Okay, the
The
interview
interview
talks
talks
about
about
they are
they are
excited
excited
for
for
us
us
to
to
have
have
joined
joined
them
them
on
on
this
this
journey,
journey,
and
and
they
they
talk
talk
about
about
questions
questions
that are
that are
being
being
asked.
asked,
And
and
while
while
there are
there are
no
no
particular
particular
patterns to
patterns to
these
these
questions,
questions,
and
and
they are
they are
particularly
particularly
very
very
vague,
vague,
but
but
also
also
this
this
system is
system is
adopted
adopted
by
by
the
the
orgs
orgs
because they
because
are
they are
open-ended
open-ended,
and
and
gives
gives
the
the interviewee
interviewer
interviewer
an
an
insight
insight
into their
into their
mind, and
mind, and
interviewee
interviewee
to
to
demonstrate
demonstrate
their
their
breadth
breadth
and
and
depth of
depth
the
of the
topics
topics
that
that
they
they
have
have
worked
worked
on,
on,
and the
and the
familiarity
familiarity
with
with
the
the
real
real
world
world
scenarios.
scenarios.
So
So
yeah.
yeah.
Also,
Also,
this is
this
a
is a
topic
topic
that
that
I
I
highly
highly
enjoy
enjoy
because
because
these
these
are the
are the
things
things
that
that
you
you
actually
actually
work
work
on
on
a
a
day-to-day
day-to-day
basis,
basis,
and
and
it
it
really
really
tells
tells
you
you
what are
what are
the
the
trade-offs
trade-offs
that you
that you
need
need
to
to
have
have
over
over
things
things
while
while
building a
building a
system,
system,
and
and
what are
what
the
are the
trade-offs
trade-offs
are
are
non-negotiables.
non-negotiables.
Essentially,
Essentially,
building a
building a
system,
system,
like
like
the
the
higher
higher
you
you
keep
keep
going in
going in
the
the
software
software
hierarchy,
hierarchy,
the
the
more
more
it
it
is
is
that
that
the
the
cost of
cost of
taking
taking
decisions which
decisions
are
which are
reversible or
reversible or
irreversible
irreversible
keeps
keeps
getting
getting
higher. For
higher. For
example, if
example, if
someone is
someone
at
is
an
at an
architect
architect
level,
level,
then
then
a
a
huge
huge
part of
part of
what
what
they
they
do
do
might
might
be
be
that
that
taking
taking
decisions which
decisions
are
which are
very
very
hard to
hard to
reverse, or
reverse, or
which
which
will be
will be
set in
set in
stone,
stone,
which will
which
be
will be
very
very
irreversible or
irreversible or
can be
can be
reversed but
reversed
at
but
a
at a
high
high
cost.
cost.
Whereas
Whereas
compared to
compared to
someone who
someone
is
who
a
is a
SD1,
SD1,
then
then
for
for
them
them
it is
it is
more
more
about
about
implementation,
implementation,
and
and
then
then
on the
on the
get-go
get-go
focusing
focusing
on
on
things
things
that are
that are
being
being
told.
told.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's
what
what
this
this
book is
book is
about.
about.
A
A
lot of
lot
the
of the
topics
topics
are
are
part
part
of
of
bread and
bread and
butter
butter
of
of
your
your
usual
usual
day in
day
the
in the
life of
life of
software
software
engineer.
engineer.
So
So
yeah.
yeah.
Also, the
Also, the
goal of
goal
these
of these
interviews
interviews
are
are
largely
largely
based
based
on
on
to coming up
coming up
with
with
some
some
sort of
sort
a
of a
system
system
that
that
would
would
hold, or
hold, or
that would
that
be
would be
battle
battle
tested in
tested
a
in a
real
real
world
world
scenario
scenario
that
that
would
would
not
not
crumble
crumble
under
under
load.
load.
So
So
that's
that's
the
the
area
area
that
that
interviewers are
interviewers are
looking
looking
for.
for.
And it
And it
totally
totally
depends
depends
on
on
them if
them
they
if they
want
want
to
to
do a
do a
high
high
level
level
architecture,
architecture,
or
or
if
if
they
they
want to
want to
focus on
focus
some
on some
specific
specific
areas.
areas.
So
So
system
system
requirements,
requirements,
bottlenecks, and
bottlenecks, and
constraints are
constraints are
the
the
usual,
usual
like, outline of
outline of
the
the
interview,
interview,
how it
how it
goes.
goes.
And
And
what we
what
are
we are
trying
trying
to
to
achieve
achieve
through
through
this,
this,
or
or
by
by
reading this
reading
book,
this book,
is
is
to
to
get a
get a
reliable
reliable
strategy
strategy
on
on
how do
how
you
do you
tackle
tackle
these
these
questions.
questions.
What are
What
the
are the
right
right
kind
kind
of
of
questions or
questions or
queries to
queries
be
to be
made
made
while
while
solving
solving
them?
them?
How do
How do
you
you
judge,
judge,
or how
or
do
how do
you
you
defend
defend
and
and
justify the
justify the
trade-off
trade-off
that
that
you are
you are
taking?
taking?
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
looks
looks
pretty
pretty
fun,
fun,
and
and
a
a
lot of
lot
the
of the
system,
system,
as I
as I
said,
said,
are
are
applicable
applicable
to
to
other
other
domains as
domains
well.
as well.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
scalability
scalability
and
and
building
building
systems
systems
which
which
are
are
used in
used in
day-to-day
day-to-day
scenarios
scenarios
is
is
what
what
this
this
book will
book
be
will be
all
all
about.
about.
And
And
finally,
finally,
the
the
last
last
bit
bit
tells
tells
about
about
While this book contains multiple questions, but constant practice is something that you need to be doing after going through these questions. All right, that looks good. Okay,
Okay,
so
so
officially,
officially,
let's
let's
start.
start.
So,
So,
chapter
chapter
one:
one,
scale
scale
from
from
zero to
0 to
millions of
millions of
users.
users.
Designing a
Designing a
system
system
that
that
supports
supports
millions of
millions of
users is
users is
challenging,
challenging,
and it
and
is
it
a
is a
journey
journey
that
that
requires
requires
continuous
continuous
refinement
refinement
and
and
endless
endless
improvement.
improvement.
In this
In this
chapter, we
chapter, we
build a
build a
system that
system that
supports a
supports a
single
single
user
user
and
and
gradually
gradually
scale it
scale
up
it up
to
to
serve
serve
millions of
millions of
users.
users.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
far so
far so
good.
good.
After
After
reading this
reading this
chapter,
chapter,
you will
you will
master a
master a
handful of
handful of
techniques
techniques
that will
that will
help
help
you
you
crack the
crack the
system
system
design
design
interview
interview
questions.
questions.
Okay,
Okay,
let's go
let's go
ahead.
ahead.
Single
Single
server
server
setup.
setup.
Okay,
Okay,
a
a
journey of
journey
a
of a
thousand
thousand
miles
miles
begins with
begins
a
with a
single
single
step,
step,
and
and
building a
building a
complex
complex
system is
system
no
is no
different.
different.
To
To
start
start
with
with
something
something
simple,
simple,
everything is
everything is
running on a
running on a
single
single
server.
server.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds
sounds
good.
good.
This
This
could be
could
your
be your
Apache,
Apache,
Tomcat,
Tomcat,
or
or
something
something
similar
similar
whenever
whenever
you
you
develop
develop
a
a
application on
application
your
on your
local
local
and you
and you
try to
try to
run
run
it,
it,
sort of
sort
a
of a
hello
hello
world of
world of
sorts.
sorts.
So
So
what
what
it is
it is
doing
doing
is
is
this is
this is
showing,
showing,
all
all
right,
right,
yeah.
yeah. So
So this
this
bit
bit
is
is
showing
showing
that
that
to
to
start
start
with,
with,
okay,
okay,
single
single
server
server
setup
setup
where
where
everything is
everything is
running on
running
one
on one
server,
server,
all
all
right,
right.
a web
Web
app,
app,
database,
database,
cache,
cache,
etc.
etc.
All
All
right.
right.
So
So
far
far
so
so
good.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
okay,
okay,
web
web
server.
server.
This
This
contains
contains
everything,
everything,
and
and
then
then
web
web
browser
browser
or
or
mobile
mobile
app
app
where
where
APIs are
APIs are
being
being
used
used
of the
of the
website
website
called
called
my
My
site.
Site.
Okay.
Okay.
To
To
understand this
understand this
setup, it
setup,
is
it is
helpful to
helpful to
investigate the
investigate the
request flow
request
and
flow and
traffic
traffic
source.
source.
Let us
Let us
first look
first
at
look
the
at the
request
request
flow.
flow.
All
All
right.
right.
So
So
when
when
user
user
opens the
opens the
website or
website
they
or they
open
open
the
the
app
app
and
and
they are
they are
connected to
connected
the
to the
network,
network,
if we
if we
assume your
assume your
network is
network is
working
working
fine,
fine,
then
then
the
the
call to
call to
DNS
DNS
goes
goes
and
and
they
they
check
check
what
what
is
is
API
API at
mysite.com,
mysite.com,
and
and
then
then
some
some
numbers are
numbers are
being
being
sent. We
sent. We
will
will
go
go
what are
what are
these
these
on
on
next
next
page.
page.
So
So
some
some
numbers are
numbers are
being
being
sent,
sent,
and
and
then
then
those
using
using those,
those,
there's the
there's the
call
call
going to
going to
server,
server,
and
and
then we
then
are
we are
getting
getting
HTML
HTML
from
from
the
the
web
web
server.
server.
All
All
right.
right.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
here
here
comes the
comes the
bit
bit
that
that
was
was
shown in
shown in
the
the
image.
image.
Okay.
Okay.
User
User
access
access
websites
websites
through
through
domain
domain
names
names
such as
such as
api.mysite.com.
api.mysite.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Usually the
Usually the
domain name
domain name
system
system
is a
is a
paid
paid
service
service
provided by
provided by
third
third
parties and
parties
not
and not
hosted by
hosted by
our
our
servers.
servers.
Correct.
Correct.
So
So
TNS is
TNS is
basically
basically
whenever you
whenever you
get a
get a
domain,
domain,
these are
these are
the
the
resolvers
resolvers
that are
that are
there.
there.
So
So
how do
how
we
do we
look at
look at
them? You
them? You
just look
just
at
look
them
at
as
them as
a
a
phone
phone
record
record
book
book
where
where
you
you
might
might
have
have
a
a
key
key
value
value
pairs
pairs
or
or
indexes
indexes
that
that
person
person
XYZ
XYZ
is
is
the
the
contact
contact
number
number
for
for
them is
them is
this.
this.
So
So
IP
IP
address is
address is
returned to
returned
the
to the
browser or
browser or
mobile app.
mobile app.
In the
In the
example,
example,
this
this
address
address
is
is
returned.
returned.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
perfect.
Once the
Once the
IP
IP
address is
address is
obtained,
obtained,
Hypertext
hypertext
Transfer
transfer
Protocol
protocol
HTTP
HTTP
requests are
requests are
sent
sent
directly to
directly
your
to your
web
web
server.
server.
All right.
All right.
The
The
web
web
server
server
returns
returns
HTML
HTML
pages or
pages or
JSON
JSON
response for
response for
rendering.
rendering.
Okay.
Okay.
Next,
Next,
let us
let us
examine the
examine the
traffic
traffic
source.
source.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
traffic to
traffic to
your
your
web
web
server
server
comes
comes
from
from
two
two
sources:
sources:
web
web
application
application
and
and
mobile
mobile
application.
application.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
far
far
so
so
good,
good.
makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
Web
Web
application. It
application. It
uses a
uses a
combination of
combination of
server-side
server-side
languages
languages
such as
such as
Java,
Java,
Python,
Python,
etc.
etc.
to
to
handle
handle
business
business
logic,
logic,
storage,
storage,
etc.
etc.
And
And
client-side
client-side
languages,
languages,
HTML.
HTML.
All
All
right,
right.
and
And
just a
just a
second.
second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
The
traffic to
traffic
your
to your
web
web
server
server
comes
comes
from
from
two
two
sources.
sources.
Okay,
Okay,
I
I
think
think
this is
this is
better
better
for of our readability. So
So
yeah,
yeah,
we
we
will
will
go
go
with
with
this.
this.
All
All
right.
right.
So
So
user
user
access.
access.
All
All
right.
right.
Done
Done
till
till
this
this
point.
point.
Now
Now
let us
let us
examine the
examine the
traffic
traffic
source.
source.
Now
Now
the
the
traffic
traffic
to
to
our
our
website
website
when it's
When it's
coming
coming
through
through
a
a
application,
application,
it
it
can
can
come
come
through
through
server-side
server-side
languages
languages
such as
such as
Java,
Java,
Python,
Python,
etc.
etc.
The
The
languages
languages
that
that
is usually
usually
called
called
a
a
backend,
backend,
which
which
like
like
the
the
app is
app is
running on
running
what
on what
backend
backend
to
to
handle
handle
business
business
logic,
logic,
storage,
storage,
etc.
etc.
And
And
client-side
client-side
languages,
languages,
HTML
HTML
and
and
JavaScript
JavaScript
for
for
presentation
presentation
rendering
rendering
on the
on the
user
user
side
side
mobile
mobile
application.
application.
Now,
Now,
HTTP
HTTP
protocol is
protocol
the
is the
communication
communication
protocol
protocol
between the
between the
mobile
mobile
app
app
and the
and the
web
web
server.
server.
JSON
JSON
or
or
JavaScript
JavaScript
object
object
notation is
notation is
commonly
commonly
used
used
API
API
response
response
format to
format to
transfer the
transfer the
data due
data
to
due
its
to its
simplicity.
simplicity.
Okay.
Okay.
An
An
example of
example
the
of the
API
API
response in
response in
JSON
JSON
format is
format is
as
as
follows.
follows.
They are
They are
doing a
doing a
get
get
call
call
for the
for the
resource
resource
slash
slash
users
users
slash
slash
12,
12,
and
and
they
they
are
are
retrieving the
retrieving the
user
user
object
object
for
for
ID
ID
equal to
equal to
12.
12.
Now
Now,
this
this
is
is
a
a
JSON
JSON
block,
block,
starts with
starts
a
with a
curly
curly
brace,
brace,
ends with a
ends with a
curly
curly
brace.
brace.
In
In
between, there
between,
are
there are
key
key
value
value
pairs.
pairs.
There
There
can
can
be
be
arrays
arrays
as
as
well,
well,
which you
which you
see
see
for
for
phone
phone
numbers
numbers
here.
here.
And then
And then
address
address
is
is
another
another
object that
object that
contains
contains
other
other
key
key
value
value
pairs. So
pairs.
there
So there
can
can
be
be
nested
nested
things as
things
well
as
in
well
the
in the
JSON.
JSON.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
far so
far so
good.
good.
So
So
database.
database.
With the
With the
growth of
growth
the
of the
user
user
base,
base,
one
one
server
server
is
is
not
not
enough,
enough,
and we
and we
need
need
multiple
multiple
servers,
servers,
one
one
for
for
web,
web,
mobile
mobile
traffic,
traffic,
the
the
other
other
for the
for the
database.
database.
So
So
separating the
separating the
web,
web,
mobile
mobile
traffic,
traffic,
web
web
tier,
tier,
and
and
database,
database,
that is
that is
data
data
tier
tier
server,
server,
allows
allows
them to
them
be
to be
scaled
scaled
independently.
independently.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
perfect,
Sounds
sounds
good.
good.
Now the
Now the
new
new
diagram
diagram
becomes
becomes
that
that
there
there
is
is
user
user
side
side
web
web
browser
browser
mobile
mobile
app,
app,
which
which
calls
calls
DNS,
DNS,
gets the
gets the
IP
IP
address
address
back
back
to the
to the
server,
server,
either
either
through
through
API
API
or
or
on the
on the
website
website
directly.
directly.
And
And
then there
then
is
there
a
is a
call
call
being
being
made by
made by
web
web
server
server
to do
to do
CRUD,
CRUD,
create,
create,
read,
read,
update,
update,
delete
delete
operations on
operations
the
on the
database,
database,
and
and
then
then
DB
DB
returns the
returns the
data.
data.
Now,
Now,
the
the
question
question
is
is
which
which
database to
database to
use.
use.
You can
You can
choose
choose
between a
between a
traditional
traditional
relational
relational
database
database
and a
and a
non-relational
non-relational
database.
database.
Let us
Let us
examine their
examine their
differences.
differences.
Okay.
Okay.
Relational
Relational
databases are
databases are
also
also
called
called
a
a
RDBMS,
RDBMS,
that is
that is
Relational
Relational
Database
Database
Management
Management
System,
System,
or
or
SQL
SQL
database.
database.
The
The
most
most
popular
popular
ones are
ones are
MySQL,
MySQL,
Oracle
Oracle
Database,
Database,
PostgreSQL,
PostgreSQL,
etc.
etc.
Relational
Relational
databases
databases
represent
represent
and
and
store
store
data
data
in
in
tables
tables
and
and
rows.
rows.
You can
You can
perform
perform
join
join
operations
operations
using
using
SQL
SQL
across
across
different
different
database
database
tables.
tables.
Okay.
Okay.
Non-relational
Non-relational
databases
databases
are
are
also
also
called
called
NoSQL
NoSQL
databases.
databases.
Popular
Popular
ones are
ones are
CouchDB,
CouchDB,
Neo4j,
Neo4j,
Cassandra,
Cassandra,
HBase,
HBase,
Amazon
Amazon
DynamoDB,
DynamoDB,
and
and
more.
more.
These
These
databases are
databases are
grouped
grouped
into
into
four
four
categories.
categories.
The
The
NoSQL
NoSQL
databases
databases
themselves
themselves
are
are
distributed into
distributed
four
into four
categories,
categories,
and
and
these are
these are
key
key
value
value
stores,
stores,
graph
graph
stores,
stores,
column
column
stores, and
stores, and
document
document
stores.
stores.
All
All
right.
right.
Join
Join
operations are
operations are
generally
generally
not
not
supported
supported
in
in
non-relational
non-relational
databases.
databases.
Okay,
Okay,
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
For
For
most
most
developers,
developers,
relational
relational
databases are
databases
the
are the
best
best
option
option
because
because
they
they
have been
have been
around for
around
over
for over
40
40
years
years
and
and
historically they
historically they
have
have
worked
worked
well.
well.
Okay.
Okay.
However,
However,
if
if
relational
relational
databases are
databases are
not
not
suitable
suitable
for
for
your
your
specific
specific
use
use
cases,
cases,
it is
it is
critical
critical
to
to
explore
explore
beyond
beyond
RDBMS.
RDBMS.
Okay.
Okay.
Non-relational
Non-relational
databases
databases
might be
might
the
be the
right
right
choice
choice
if
if
your
your
app
app
requires
requires
super low
super low
latency,
latency,
data is
data is
unstructured,
unstructured,
or you
or
do
you do
not
not
have
have
any
any
relational
relational
logical
logical
flow of
flow of
data.
data.
You
You
only
only
need to
need to
serialize and
serialize and
deserialize
deserialize
data.
data.
JSON,
JSON,
XML,
XML,
YAML
YAML
are
are
the
the
popular
popular
known
known
formats
formats
for
for
this.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
when
when
application
application
requires
requires
super low
super low
latency,
latency,
or
or
if
if
data is
data is
unstructured,
unstructured,
or we
or
do
we
not have
don't
any
have any
relational
relational
data,
data,
we need
we
to
need to
serialize,
serialize,
or
or
we
if
need
we
to
need to
store a
store a
massive
massive
amount of
amount of
data.
data.
So
So
these are
these
the
are the
cases.
cases
databases when we might need non-relational databases. And the four types of these are key value stores, graph stores, column stores, and document stores. Okay, more on these later. All
All
right.
right.
So
So
far,
far,
so
so
good.
good.
So
So
now
now,
moving
moving
ahead,
ahead,
vertical
vertical
scaling
scaling
versus
versus
horizontal
horizontal
scaling.
scaling.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
vertical
vertical
scaling
scaling
referred to
referred
as
to as
scale
scale
up
up
means
means
the
the
process of
process of
adding
adding
more
more
CPU,
CPU,
RAM,
RAM,
etc. to
etc.
your
to your
servers.
servers.
Think of
Think
it
of it
like
like
your
your
home
home
PC,
PC,
for
for
example.
example.
Say
Say
you
you
build
build
your
your
PC with
PC
a
with a
config
config
of
of
16
16
gigs
gigs
of
of
RAM
RAM
and
and
4 GB
4 GB
GPU, for
GPU, for
example.
example.
Now,
Now,
What the
The
vertical
vertical
scaling
scaling
means
means
that
that
your
your
CPU or
CPU
the
or the
bare
bare
metal
metal
remains the
remains the
same,
same,
but you
but you
can
can
replace
replace
the
the
sticks
sticks
of
of
RAM,
RAM,
which were
which
of
were of
8 and
8 and
8
8
GBs
GBs
to
to
two
two
sticks of
sticks of
16 and
16 and
16
16
GB,
GB,
which
which
would
would
lead
lead
to
to
32
32
gigs
gigs
of
of
RAM.
RAM.
And so
And so
you are
you are
going
going
vertically up
vertically up
on the
on the
same
same
machine.
machine.
So
So
that
that
is
is
your
your
vertical
vertical
scaling. You
scaling.
could
You
do
could
the
do the
same
same
for
for
other
other
resources
resources
as well.
as well.
That's
That's
vertical
vertical
scaling.
scaling.
Now,
Now,
horizontal
horizontal
scaling
scaling
refers
refers
to
to
as
as
adding
adding
more
more
servers
servers
into
into
your
your
pool of
pool of
resources.
resources.
Now,
Now,
when
when
traffic
traffic
is
is
low,
low,
vertical
vertical
scaling is a
scaling is a
great
great
option.
option.
So
So
when you
when
are
you are
starting
starting
out,
out,
usually
usually
vertical
vertical
scaling
scaling
is
is
the
the
approach
approach
when you
when you
deploy
deploy
your
your
app
app
in
in
its
its
first
first
beta
beta
phase or
phase
for
or for
testing
testing
and
and
to
to
validate the
validate the
idea if
idea if
it's
it's
good or
good or
not.
not.
In
In
fact,
fact,
for
for
one of
one
the
of the
side
side
projects
projects
that I
that I
did,
did,
what I
what I
did
did
was
was
I
I
literally
literally
hosted
hosted
it
it
on my
on my
laptop.
laptop.
The
The
server was
server was
running,
running,
and
and
through a
through a
tunnel,
tunnel,
Cloudflare
Cloudflare
tunnel, I
tunnel, I
exposed it
exposed it
so
so
that
that
the
the
internal
internal
team,
team,
five,
five,
six
six
of
of
us,
us,
and
and
8 to 10
8 to 10
friends of
friends of
mine can
mine can
test and
test and
validate the
validate the
idea
idea
if
if
that is
that
good
is good
enough or
enough or
not.
not.
And
And
when
when
it
it
was
was
tested
tested
and
and
it
it
was
was
working
working
fine,
fine,
it is
it is
only
only
then
then
that
that
I
I
moved it
moved it
into
into
a
a
N10
N10
workflow,
workflow,
and
and
that
that
also
also
scaled up
scaled up
to
to
100 to
100 to
200
100
users.
users.
And
And
when
when
we were
we were
sure
sure
that we
that we
actually
actually
want
want
to
to
do it,
do it,
then
then
we
we
started on
started on
a
a
very
very
basic
basic
free
free
tier of
tier of
some
some
cloud
cloud
provider,
provider,
and
and
that's
that's
how
how
we
we
started.
started.
So,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
vertical
vertical
scaling is
scaling is
sort of
sort
your
of your
go-to
go-to
when you
when
are
you are
starting
starting
and when
and
the
when the
traffic is
traffic is
really
really
low
low
in the
in the
initial
initial
days.
days.
But
But
there are
there are
serious
serious
limitations of
limitations of
vertical
vertical
scaling.
scaling.
For
For
example,
example,
vertical
vertical
scaling has
scaling
a
has a
hard
hard
limit.
limit.
It is
It is
impossible to
impossible
add
to add
unlimited
unlimited
CPU
CPU
and
and
memory to
memory
a
to a
single
single
server.
server.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Vertical
Vertical
scaling does
scaling does
not
not
have
have
failover
failover
and
and
redundancy.
redundancy.
Because
Because
usually in
usually in
vertical
vertical
scaling, you
scaling, you
usually
usually
have
have
one
one
server
server
running,
running,
and if
and
that
if that
goes
goes
down,
down,
the
the
website
website
app
app
goes
goes
down with
down
it
with it
completely.
completely.
And
And
also in
also in
our
our
scenario,
scenario,
if
if
there is
there is
not a
not
lot
a
of
lot of
traffic, it
traffic, it
might
might
be
be
highly
highly
possible
possible
that
that
other
other
than
than
the
the
main
main
code for
code
the
for the
website, but
website,
your
but your
databases and
databases
all
and
the
all the
other
other
things are
things are
also
also
running on
running
the
on the
same
same
machine.
machine.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
there is
there
no
is no
failover,
failover,
there is
there
no
is no
redundancy
redundancy
in
in
this.
this.
Now,
Now,
horizontal
horizontal
scaling.
scaling.
Horizontal
Horizontal
scaling is
scaling is
more
more
desirable
desirable
for
for
large
large
scale
scale
applications
applications
due to
due
the
to the
limitations of
limitations of
vertical
vertical
scaling.
scaling.
In the
In the
previous
previous
design,
design,
users are
users are
connected to
connected
the
to the
web
web
server
server
directly.
directly.
That is
That
a
is a
vertical.
vertical.
Users
Users will
will be unable
able
to
to
access the
access the
website if
website
the
if the
web
web
server is
server is
offline.
offline.
Yeah,
Yeah,
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
In
In
another
another
scenario,
scenario,
if
if
users
users
access
access
the
the
web
web
servers
servers
simultaneously
simultaneously
and it
and it
reaches the
reaches
web
the web
server's
server's
load
load
limit,
limit,
users
users
generally
generally
experience
experience
slower
slower
response
response
or
or
fail to
fail to
connect to
connect
the
to the
server.
server.
A
A
load
load
balancer,
balancer,
or
or
talk
talk
about
about
IRCTC
IRCTC
website,
website,
or
or
my
my
college
college
website
website
when
when
it
it
was
was
results, or
results, or
any
any
other
other
website
website
that
that
we have
we have
seen, which
seen,
is
which is
sort of
sort of
a
a
legacy
legacy
website.
website.
We
We
see
see
this.
this.
Now, a
Now, a
load
load
balancer is
balancer
the
is the
best
best
technique to
technique to
address
address
all of
all of
these
these
problems.
problems.
So
So
now you
now you
might
might
ask,
ask,
what
what
is a
is a
load
load
balancer?
balancer?
So
So
this is
this is
what
what
comes
comes
next.
next.
A
A
load
load
balancer
balancer
evenly
evenly
distributes
distributes
incoming
incoming
traffic
traffic
among
among
web
web
servers
servers
that are
that are
defined in
defined
a
in a
load
load
balanced
balanced
set.
set.
Now,
Now,
this
this
figure
figure
shows
shows
how
how
load
load
balancer
balancer
works.
works.
So
So
you
you
have
have
user
user
calling the
calling the
website,
website,
then
then
DNS
DNS
resolving
resolving
it,
it,
redirecting the
redirecting the
user to
user
the
to the
IP,
IP,
then
then
we
we
get the
get the
IP,
IP,
yada
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 yada,
yada,
whatever we
whatever
have
we have
seen
seen
before.
before.
Now
Now
the
the
call
call
comes to
comes to
load
load
balancer.
balancer.
So as
So
you
as
can
you
see,
can
as shown above. Users connect to the public IP of the load balancer directly. With this setup, web servers are unreachable directly by clients anymore. For better security, private IPs are used for communication between servers. A private IP is an IP address reachable only between servers in the same network. However, it is unreachable over the internet. The load balancer communicates with web servers through private IPs. Okay. Above, we can see that after a load balancer and a second web server are added, we successfully solved no failover issue that we were facing in vertical scaling and improved the availability of web tier. Okay, that makes sense. The specific reason why this web tier is because we need to do something similar, or we need to resolve same scenario for the database as well. Now, details are explained below. If
If
server
server
1
1
goes
goes
offline,
offline,
all the
all the
traffic
traffic
will
will
be
be
routed
routed
to
to
server
server
2.
2.
This
This
prevents the
prevents the
website
website
from
from
going
going
offline.
offline.
Makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
Okay,
Okay,
pretty
pretty
sensible to
sensible
do.
to do.
We will
We will
also add
also
a
add a
new
new
healthy
healthy
web
web
server
server
to
to
the
the
server
server
pool
pool
to
to
balance
balance
the
the
load.
load.
Okay.
Okay.
If the
If the
website
website
traffic
traffic
grows
grows
rapidly
rapidly
and
and
two
two
servers are
servers are
not
not
enough to
enough to
handle the
handle the
traffic,
traffic,
the
the
load
load
balancer
balancer
can
can
handle
handle
this
this
problem
problem
gracefully.
gracefully.
You only
You only
need to
need to
add
add
more
more
servers
servers
to the
to the
web
web
server
server
pool.
pool.
Okay.
Okay.
And the
And the
load
load
balancer
balancer
automatically
automatically
starts to
starts to
send
send
requests
requests
to
to
them.
them.
Okay.
Okay.
Now the
Now the
web
web
tier
tier
looks
looks
good.
good.
What
What
about the
about the
data
data
tier?
tier?
The
The
current
current
design
design
has
has
one
one
database,
database,
so it
so
does
it does
not
not
support
support
failover
failover
and
and
redundancy.
redundancy.
Okay,
Okay.
database
Database
replication is
replication
a
is a
common
common
technique
technique
to
to
address
address
these
these
problems.
problems.
Let us
Let us
take a
take a
look.
look.
Database
Database
replication
replication
quoted
quoted
from
from
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
Okay,
Okay.
database
Database
replication
replication
can be
can be
used
used
many
many
DBMS,
DBMS,
usually with
usually
a
with a
master-slave
master-slave
relationship
relationship
between the
between the
original,
original,
that is
that is
master,
master,
and the
and the
copies
copies
that are
that are
slaves.
slaves.
A
A
master
master
database
database
generally
generally
only
only
supports
supports
write
write
operations.
operations.
Okay,
Okay,
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
So the
So the
transactions
transactions
being
being
made by
made
the
by the
user
user
by the
by the
actions
actions
that
that
users are
users are
doing,
doing,
the
the
write
write
operations will
operations will
happen on
happen
the
on the
master.
master.
A
A
slave
slave
database
database
gets
gets
copies of
copies
the
of the
data
data
from the
from the
master
master
database and
database and
only
only
supports
supports
read
read
operations.
operations.
So
So
read
read
intensive
intensive
operations,
operations,
creating
creating
your
your
dashboards,
dashboards,
aggregating
aggregating
things,
things,
checking for
checking for
anomalies,
anomalies,
all
all
of
of
that
that
should
should
happen
happen
from
from
your
your
slave
slave
DB.
DB.
All the
All the
data
data
modifying
modifying
commands
commands
like
like
insert,
insert,
delete, or
delete, or
update
update
must be
must be
sent to
sent
the
to the
master
master
database.
database.
Okay,
Okay,
we are
we are
sort
sort
of
of
creating
creating
a
a
bifurcation or
bifurcation
a
or a
division
division
between
between
how the
how the
load will
load
be
will be
distributed.
distributed.
Everything
Everything
that
that
is
is
supposed
supposed
to
to
change the
change the
values or
values or
add the
add the
values,
values,
create the
create the
values,
values,
create,
create,
update,
update,
delete
delete
should
should
all
all
go
go
to
to
your
your
master
master
DB.
DB.
Whereas
Whereas
there's a
there's a
layer of
layer of
replication,
replication,
and then
and
there
then
are
there are
replicas,
replicas,
slave
slave
DBs,
DBs,
which
which
will
will
handle
handle
all of
all
the
of the
load
load
coming to
coming to
your
your
database
database
server,
server,
which is
which is
of
of
read
read
intensive
intensive
tasks.
tasks.
Okay,
Okay,
that's what
that's
they're
what they're
trying to
trying
say
to say
here.
here.
Most
Most
applications
applications
require a
require a
much
much
higher
higher
ratio
ratio
of
of
reads to
reads to
writes.
writes.
Correct.
Correct.
The
The
number of
number of
slave
slave
database in
database
a
in a
system is
system is
usually
usually
larger
larger
than the
than the
number of
number of
master
master
databases.
databases.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
figure
figure
below
below
shows a
shows a
master
master
database
database
with
with
multiple
multiple
slave
slave
databases.
databases.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes
Makes
sense. So
sense.
web
Web
servers,
servers,
multiple
multiple
reads
reads
going to
going to
multiple
multiple
slave
slave
DBs,
DBs,
writes.
writes.
Then there
Then
is a
there is a
replication
replication
layer.
layer.
Okay.
Okay.
Advantages of
Advantages of
database
database
replication.
replication.
Better
Better
performance.
performance.
Okay.
Okay.
This
This
looks
looks
better. Yeah.
better. Yeah.
Advantages of
Advantages of
database
database
replication.
replication.
Better
Better
performance.
performance.
In the
In the
master
master
slave
slave
model,
model,
all
all
writes and
writes and
updates
updates
happen in
happen in
master
master
nodes,
nodes,
whereas
whereas
read
read
operations
operations
are
are
distributed
distributed
across the
across the
slave
slave
nodes.
nodes.
This
This
model
model
improves
improves
performance
performance
because it
because it
allows
allows
more
more
queries to
queries
be
to be
processed in
processed in
parallel.
parallel.
Okay.
Okay.
Reliability.
Reliability.
If
If
one of
one of
your
your
database
database
servers is
servers is
destroyed by
destroyed
a
by a
natural
natural
disaster,
disaster,
such as
such as
typhoon or
typhoon
an
or an
earthquake,
earthquake,
data is
data is
still
still
preserved.
preserved.
You do
You do
not
not
need to
need to
worry
worry
about
about
data
data
loss
loss
because
because
data is
data is
replicated
replicated
across
across
multiple
multiple
locations.
locations.
By the
By
way,
the way,
this
this
similar
similar
topic
topic
is
is
used
used,
of
or
master and
master and
slave
slave
or
or
the
the
replicas
replicas
is
is
used
used
in
in
other
other
cases in
cases in
computer
computer
science
science
as
as
well.
well.
For
For
example,
example,
for
for
Kafka
Kafka
also,
also,
you
you
have
have
topics,
topics,
then there
then
are
there are
partitions,
partitions,
then
then
there
there
also you
also
have
you
a
have a
master and
master
a
and a
slave
slave
relationship
relationship
where
where
there is
there is
a
a
master
master
partition
partition
where
where
the
the
things
things
gets
gets
written,
written,
but
but
then a
then a
clone of
clone
it
of it
goes
goes
into
into
the
the
other
other
for
for
that
that
particular
particular
topic,
topic,
so
so
that
that
in
in
case
case
one of
one
the
of the
topic
topic
or
or
one of
one
the
of the
broker
broker
is
is
not
not
responding,
responding,
then
then
we
we
can
can
run
run
a
a
sort of
sort
a
of a
consensus
consensus
polling polling, and then we can initiate a new leader where the data will be going. In this scenario, it will be similar to if master goes down, then another slave through a voting process is designated as a leader, and all of the right operations go to them. So yeah, sorry for going off tangent. Just trying to link multiple things which are sort of similar. Okay,
Okay,
moving on.
moving on.
High
High
availability.
availability.
By
By
replicating
replicating
data
data
across
across
different
different
locations,
locations,
website
website
remains in
remains in
operation
operation
even if
even
a
if a
database is
database is
offline,
offline,
as you
as you
can
can
access
access
data
data
stored in
stored in
another
another
database
database
server.
server.
Okay,
Okay,
very
very
valid.
valid.
Okay,
Okay,
in the
in the
previous
previous
section, we
section, we
discussed
discussed
how
how
a
a
load
load
balancer
balancer
helped
helped
to
to
improve
improve
system
system
availability.
availability.
We asked
We
the
asked the
same
same
question
question
here.
here.
What
What
if
if
one of
one
the
of the
database
database
goes
goes
offline?
offline?
The architectural design discussed in the figure above can handle this case. If only one slave database is available and it goes offline, read operations will be directed to the master database temporarily. As soon as the issue is found, a new slave database will replace the old one. In case multiple slave databases are available, read operations are redirected to other healthy slave databases. A new database server will replace the old one. So far, whatever we are seeing is in all of these system design related things, the main thing that you need to like the main thing that you need to focus on is what are the components, which components are connecting to other things, which are the components which are a single point of failures, how do you eliminate those single point of failures, and on top of that, how do you exactly come up with multiple permutation and combinations that which is a master database, which is the slave database, and what happens if all of them go down, what happens if one of them go down, and then do a trade-off or take a call that what is critical, what is not, because this is what constructing real-world systems is also about. For example, you are building a microservices, and in that microservices, if you have a system which accepts payments from the user, but at the same time it also stores a metadata for say analytics that user is doing transaction from which pin code, for example. Now this is the optional metadata, and it could also be that your transactions might be getting completed, but this metadata is not coming, say it's not flowing to you due to some serialization issue in one of your other microservices. Now when you are writing system as a on the payments end of it, now you need to ensure that you write your code or you handle the cases in your system in such a way that even if the optional bit, the metadata is not coming in, you do not break the transaction, because for the user's end-to-end journey, for the user's experience or their trust in your product, it is the payment that needs to go through, but not the optional thing that analytics might need. And because it is non-mandatory, but we are storing it. So these are the just some examples that how do you build systems, how do you take a call that where do I draw the line that this is a strict for me, and if this fails then I need to just roll back or it won't work for me. So this is the vibe that I am getting so far from this book, that they are introducing a mechanism. They are telling you that this is how it happens. These are the things that you can do to prevent. This is what happens when all of them go down. This is what happens when one of it goes down. So, yeah, just wanted to give a high level view of how I am able to gauge from this. Okay. So, if only one database is available, okay, yeah, we have gone through this. In case multiple slave databases are available, read operations are redirected to other healthy ones. Alright, so far so good. And a new database server will replace the old one. If the master database goes offline, a slave database will be promoted to be new master. All the database operations will be temporarily executed on the new master database. A new slave database will replace the old one which became master for data replication immediately. In production systems, promoting a new master is more complicated as the data in a slave database might not be up to date. That's why there are more detailed consensus algorithms around these topics. Maybe that is what the second book is all about. But yeah, moving on here. In production systems, the missing data needs to be updated by running data recovery scripts, although some other replication methods like multi-masters and circular replication could help. Those setups are more complicated and their discussions are beyond the scope of this book. Okay, yeah. Interested readers should refer to the listed materials. Okay, that's a reference. Okay. Figure 1. Okay, the figure shows the system design after adding the load balancer and database replication. Okay. We added load balancer, web tier protected, data tier protected, master replication. All read is going to slave, all write is coming to master. Okay, great so far. Okay, moving on. Let us look at the design. A user gets the IP address of the load balancer from DNS. Okay. A user connects the load balancer with his IP address. Okay, so far so good. The
The
HTTP
HTTP
request
request
is
is
routed
routed
to either
to either
server
server
1 or
1 or
server
server
2.
2.
Okay,
Okay.
okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a
A
user
user
gets
gets
the
the
IP
IP
address
address
of the
of the
load
load
balancer
balancer
from
from
DNS. A
DNS. A
user
user
connects
connects
to the
to the
load
load
balancer
balancer
with
with
that
that
IP
IP
address.
address.
Supposedly
Supposedly,
DNS
DNS
returns
returns
the
the
IP
IP
address of
address
the
of the
load
load
balancer.
balancer.
Okay.
Okay.
And
And
load
load
balancer
balancer
internally
internally
connects with
connects with
the
the
private
private
IPs
IPs
because
because
that's
that's
a
a
VPC
VPC
virtual
virtual
private
private
cloud
cloud
environment
environment
where
where
the
the
IPs are
IPs are
not
not
accessible
accessible
outside that
outside that
organization.
organization.
It is
It is
the
the
responsibility of
responsibility
the
of the
load
load
balancer
balancer
that
that
accepts the
accepts the
request,
request,
calls
calls
the
the
internally the
internally the
servers. It
servers. It
has the
has the
mapping of
mapping of
the
the
outer
outer
world
world
request. It
request. It
allows the
allows the
request to
request to
come in
come in
and
and
then
then
it
it
reroutes
reroutes
them
them
accordingly.
accordingly.
Then the
Then the
HTTP
HTTP
request is
request is
routed
routed
to
to
either
either
server
server
1 or
1 or
server
server
2.
2.
Okay.
Okay.
A
A
web
web
server
server
reads
reads
user
user
data
data
from
from
a
a
slave
slave
database.
database.
Okay.
Okay.
A
A
web
web
server
server
routes
routes
any
any
data
data
modifying
modifying
operations to
operations
the
to the
master
master
database.
database.
This
This
includes
includes
write,
write,
update,
update,
and
and
delete
delete
operations.
operations.
Okay.
Okay.
Now you
Now
have
you
a
have a
solid
solid
understanding
understanding
of
of
the
the
web and
web and
data
data
tiers.
tiers.
Yes,
Yes,
it
it
is
is
time to
time to
improve
improve
the
the
load
load
or
or
response
response
time of
time
our
of our
website.
website.
Now,
Now,
what is
what is
load or
load or
response
response
time?
time?
It is
It is
just the
just the
time
time
in
in
which
which
the
the
various
various
resources
resources
or
or
the
the
assets on
assets
the
on the
website
website
load, how
load, how
much
much
time
time
they
they
take,
take,
how
how
much
much
latency is
latency is
there,
there,
and
and
things like
things like
that.
that.
And
And
also,
also,
there are
there are
like
like
pretty
pretty
wild
wild
research
research
also
also
done
done
on
on
this
this
topic.
topic.
Like
Like
if
if
the
the
load
load
time
time
is
is
reduced
reduced
by
by
even
even
1 second,
1 second,
the
the
perceived
perceived
speed
speed
or
or
the
the
so there
so there
is
is
actual
actual
service or
service or
the
the
quality of
quality of
service
service
QoS and
QoS
the
and the
perceived
perceived
quality of
quality of
service, it
service, it
drastically either
drastically either
drops or
drops or
goes
goes
up
up
even when
even
there
when
is
there is
a
a
slight
slight
delay.
delay.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's
what
what
uh, building
building
reliable,
reliable,
fast,
fast,
scalable
scalable
systems
systems
it's
it's
all
all
about.
about.
So
So
now we
now we
move to
move to
the
the
next
next
component in
component
this
in this
journey. The
journey. The
next
next
bit
bit
is
is
more
more
about
about
how do
how do
you
you
fast up
fast up
the
the
load
load
time of
time of
your
your
particular
particular
service.
service.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
on
on
this
this
topic,
topic,
let's
let's
go.
go.
This
This
can be
can be
done
done
by
by
adding a
adding a
cache
cache
layer
layer
and
and
shifting
shifting
static
static
content, that
content,
is
that is
JavaScript,
JavaScript,
CSS,
CSS,
image
image
video
video
files to
files
the
to the
CDN.
CDN.
Now,
Now,
cache.
cache.
A
A
cache is a
cache is a
temporary
temporary
storage
storage
area
area
that
that
stores
stores
the
the
result of
result of
expensive
expensive
responses
responses
of
of
frequently
frequently
accessed
accessed
data
data
in
in
memory
memory
so
so
that
that
subsequent
subsequent
requests are
requests are
served
served
more
more
quickly.
quickly.
A
A
very
very
sort
sort
of
of
crude
crude
example of
example of
cache
cache
I
I
can
can
give you.
give you.
For
For
example,
example,
on
on
your
your
phone
phone
Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi,
there
there
is
is
this
this
thing
thing
that
that
you
you
can
can
convert your
convert your
passwords
passwords
into a
into a
QR.
QR.
Now
Now
say you
say
are
you are
hosting a
hosting a
house
house
party.
party.
Now
Now
what
what
happens
happens
is
is
everyone
everyone
coming
coming
into
into
your
your
place
place
is
is
asking
asking
you
you
for
for
password
password
multiple
multiple
times.
times.
So
So
now
now
what you
what you
do is
do is
you
you
print
print
the
the
QR on
QR
a
on a
page
page
which
which
gives
gives
password
password
access to
access
the
to the
users
users
for your
for your
particular
particular
Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi,
and you
and you
paste it
paste
in
it
your
in your
living
living
room
room
or
or
on the
on the
dining
dining
table
table
wherever.
wherever.
And
And
whoever
whoever
asks you
asks
for
you
a
for a
password, you
password, you
just
just
redirect
redirect
them to
them to
that
that
QR.
QR.
Now
Now
that is
that
a
is a
cache.
cache.
For
For
example,
example,
you
you
are
are
not
not,
you don't
you don't
have
have
to
to
open your
open your
phone,
phone,
show it
show it
every
every
time so
time so
that the
that the
whole
whole
processing and
processing and
loading
loading
time
time
is
is
saved
saved
on your
on your
part
part
by
by
doing that.
doing that.
So
So
that
that
is
is
in a
in a
very
very
crude
crude
manner how
manner
the
how the
cache
cache
works.
works.
Fetch
Fetch
once,
ones
do
do
all
all
the
the
heavy
heavy
processing that
processing that
needs to
needs
be
to be
done,
done,
but
but
store it
store it
temporarily
temporarily
so
so
that
that
anyone
anyone
else who
else who
comes
comes
in
in
and
and
asks for
asks
the
for the
same
same
data,
data,
you
you
return
return
that
that
data to
data to
them
them
instantly.
instantly.
So
So
that's
that's
the
the
pretty
pretty
much
much
the
the
idea
idea
around
around
cache.
cache.
So
So
as
as
shown in
shown
the
in the
figure
figure
below,
below,
every time
every
a
time
web
a web
page
page
loads,
loads,
one or
one or
more
more
database
database
calls are
calls are
executed executed to fetch data, the application performance is greatly affected by calling the database repeatedly. The cache can mitigate this problem. Cache tier. The cache tier is a temporary data store layer much faster than the database. The benefits of having a separate cache tier include better system performance, ability to reduce database workloads, and the ability to scale the cache tier independently. Okay, makes sense. The figure below shows a possible setup of a cache server. If web server database, if database doesn't exist in cache, save data to cache. return data to the web server. And if its data exists in the cache, then just read it from the cache. After receiving a request, once the server gets a request, a web server checks if the cache has the available response with it, if it is handy. If it
If it
has,
has,
then
then
it
it
sends the
sends the
data
data
back to
back
the
to the
client,
client,
and
and
this
this
is
is
very
very
fast.
fast.
If the
If the
data is
data is
there,
there,
it's
it's
sort
sort
of
of
like
like
a
a
oh
oh
one,
one,
almost
almost
like
like
that.
that.
If
If
not,
not,
it
it
queries the
queries the
database,
database,
stores
stores
the
the
response in
response in
cache,
cache,
and
and
sends
sends
it
it
back to
back
the
to the
client.
client.
This
This
caching
caching
strategy is
strategy is
called a
called a
read-through
read-through
cache.
cache.
Read-through
Read-through
cache,
cache,
as
as
in
in,
if the
if the
data is
data is
not
not
present,
present,
then it
then it
will
will
call the
call the
database
database
and it
and
will
it will
fetch
fetch
the
the
data.
data.
It will
It will
store
store
it
it
in
in
itself
itself
and
and
also
also
send it
send it
back to
back
the
to the
client.
client.
This is
This is
a
a
read-through
read-through
cache.
cache.
Okay,
Okay.
important
Important
term.
term.
It's
It's
one of
one
the
of the
caching
caching
strategies.
strategies.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
other
other
caching
caching
strategies are
strategies are
available
available
depending on
depending
the
on the
data
data
type,
type,
size of
size
the
of the
data,
data,
and the
and the
access
access
patterns
patterns
that
that
we
we
might
might
see
see
for
for
the
the
data.
data.
Okay.
Okay.
A
A
previous
previous
study
study
explains how
explains how
different
different
caching
caching
strategies
strategies
work.
work.
Okay.
Okay.
There is
There is
some
some
reference of
reference
a
of a
paper.
paper.
Okay.
Okay.
Interacting
Interacting
with
with
cache
cache
server
server
is
is
simple
simple
because
because
most
most
cache
cache
servers
servers
provide
provide
APIs for
APIs for
common
common
programming
programming
languages.
languages.
The
The
following
following
code
code
snippet
snippet
shows
shows
typical
typical
memcached
memcached
APIs.
APIs.
Seconds
Seconds
equal to
equal to
1,
1.
cache
Cache
dot
dot
set
set
my
my
key.
key.
Hi
Hi
there.
there.
3600
3600
seconds,
seconds.
cache
Cache
dot
dot
get
get
my
my
key.
key.
Okay.
Okay.
Here
Here
are a
are a
few
few
considerations
considerations
for
for
using a
using a
cache
cache
system.
system.
Decide
Decide
when to
when to
use
use
cache.
cache.
Consider
Consider
using
using
cache
cache
when
when
data
data
is
is
read
read
frequently
frequently
but
but
modified
modified
infrequently.
infrequently.
So
So
read
read
heavy
heavy
and
and
light
light
on
on
write
write
sort of
sort of
loads.
loads.
Since
Since
cached
cached
data is
data is
stored in
stored in
volatile
volatile
memory,
memory,
a
a
cache
cache
server
server
is
is
not
not
ideal
ideal
for
for
persisting
persisting
data.
data.
So
So
never
never
think
think
of
of
a
a
cache
cache
server
server
as
as
your
your
permanent or
permanent
a
or a
long-term
long-term
storage.
storage.
For
For
instance, if
instance,
a
if a
cache
cache
server
server
restarts, all
restarts,
the
all the
data in
data in
memory
memory
is
is
lost.
lost.
Thus,
Thus,
important
important
data
data
should be
should be
saved in
saved in
persistent
persistent
data
data
stores,
stores,
and
and
the
the
correct
correct
policy is
policies
store
store
them in
them in
persistent
persistent
data
data
stores,
stores,
and
and
whenever
whenever
you
you
need
need
them,
them,
keep
keep
a
a
layer
layer
of
of
cache in
cache in
between
between
as we
as we
saw
saw
above
above,
and
and
then
then
fetch
fetch
from
from
that.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
now
now
expiration
expiration
policy.
policy.
It is a
It is a
good
good
practice to
practice to
implement an
implement an
expiration
expiration
policy.
policy.
Once
Once
cached
cached
data is
data is
expired,
expired,
it is
it is
removed
removed
from the
from the
cache.
cache.
Okay.
Okay.
When there
When
is
there is
no
no
expiration
expiration
policy,
policy,
cached
cached
data will
data
be
will be
stored in
stored
the
in the
memory
memory
permanently.
permanently.
Okay,
Okay,
understood.
understood.
It is
It is
advisable
advisable
not
not
to
to
make the
make the
expiration
expiration
date
date
too
too
short,
short,
as
as
this will
this will
cause the
cause the
system to
system to
reload
reload
data
data
from the
from the
database
database
too
too
frequently.
frequently.
And
And
this
this
again will
again will
lead to
lead
the
to the
same
same
loop
loop
that we
that
are
we are
having
having
cache in
cache
the
in the
first
first
place,
place,
so
so
that
that
we do
we do
not
not
have
have
to
to
keep
keep
calling the
calling the
database or
database or
to
to
not
not
make the
make the
database
database
feel
feel
too
too
overwhelmed or
overwhelmed or
bombarded with
bombarded
the
with the
requests.
requests.
But if
But if
we
we
keep the
keep the
expiration
expiration
policy
policy
short,
short,
then
then
yeah,
yeah,
the
the
same
same
thing
thing
we are
we are
doing.
doing.
Instead of
Instead of
user
user
calls, we
calls,
are
we are
just
just
doing two
doing
more
two more
calls
calls
now.
now.
Instead of
Instead of
user
user
directly
directly
calling the
calling the
database,
database,
it's
it's
now
now
calling the
calling the
cache,
cache,
then it
then it
calls the
calls the
database,
database,
and
and
then the
then the
data
data
is
is
returned.
returned.
Meanwhile,
Meanwhile,
it
it
is
is
advisable
advisable
not to
not to
make the
make the
expiration
expiration
date
date
too
too
long,
long,
as the
as the
data
data
can
can
become
become
stale.
stale.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
that is
true.
true.
So
So
this is
this
a
is a
sort of
sort of
a
a
trade-off
trade-off
where you
where you
need to
need
be
to be
sure
sure
that
that
what is
what
the
is the
right
right
policy
policy
for
for
cache
cache
refresh
refresh
for
for
your
your
particular
particular
use
use
case.
case.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Now,
the
the
other
other
consideration
consideration
for
for
using a
using a
cache is
cache is
consistency.
consistency.
Now,
Now,
this
this
involves
involves
using the
using the
data
data
store
store
and the
and the
cache in
cache in
sync.
sync.
Okay.
Okay.
This
This
involves
involves
keeping the
keeping the
data
data
store and
store and
cache
cache
in
in
sync.
sync.
Okay.
Okay.
Inconsistency
Inconsistency
can
can
happen
happen
because
because
data
data
modifying
modifying
operations
operations
on the
on the
data
data
store
store
and
and
cache
cache
are
are
not in
not
a
in a
single
single
transaction.
transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
that was
that was
about
about
consistency.
consistency.
For
For
example,
example,
when
when
you
you
are
are
writing
writing
the
the
resource
resource
or
or
creating a
creating a
row in
row
a
in a
database,
database,
and
and
then a
then a
get
get
call
call
comes,
comes,
then
then
the
the
through the
through the
read
read
through
through
policy,
policy,
read
read
through
through
caching
caching
strategy,
strategy,
the
the
data is
data is
also
also
stored in
stored
the
in the
cache
cache
and
and
then
then
returned to
returned
the
to the
client or
client
to
or
the
to the
user.
user.
But
But
now what
now what
happens
happens
is
is
a update
update
call,
call,
like a
like a
put or
put or
patch
patch
request was
request was
called.
called.
Now
Now
the
the
data
data
was
was
present
present
already
already
in the
in the
cache.
cache.
So think of
Think
it
of it
this way.
this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think of
Think
it
of it
this
this
way.
way.
A
A
create
create
call
call
was
was
done
done
and
and
the
the
resource
resource
was
was
created in
created
the
in the
DB.
DB.
Okay.
Okay.
Now
Now
resource
resource
was
was
created in
created
the
in the
DB.
DB.
Resource
Resource
created in
created
the
in the
DB.
DB.
Now
Now
what
what
happens
happens
is
is
user
user
calls
calls
for
for
the
the
resource.
resource.
Now
Now
when
when
user
user
calls
calls
for the
for the
resource,
resource,
cache
cache
does
does
not
not
have the
have the
resource.
resource.
Cache
Cache
calls
calls
the
the
DB,
DB,
returns
returns
the
the
data.
data.
DB
DB
returns the
returns the
data.
data.
And
And
post
post
that, what
that, what
happens
happens
is
is
cache
cache
stores
stores
it,
it,
returns
returns
to
to
the
the
user.
user.
Now
Now
put
put
patch
patch
call
call
to
to
change
change
value
value
of
of
resource
resource
happens.
happens.
Now what
Now what
happens is
happens is
now
now
when
when
put or
put or
patch call
patch
is
call is
happening to
happening to
change the
change the
value of
value of
resource,
resource
that
that
has
has
gone
gone
through,
through,
that is
that is
success.
success.
Okay.
Okay.
Now when the
Now when the
request is
request is
successful,
successful,
what
what
happens
happens
post
post
this
this
is
is
usually
usually
when
when
request is
request is
successful,
successful,
the
the
data in
data
the
in the
cache
cache
remains the
remains the
same
same
that
that
was
was
at the
at the
time of
time of
the
the
creation.
creation.
Now,
Now,
when a
when a
user
user
calls
calls
for
for
that
that
resource,
resource,
and
and
because
because
we
we
are
are
having
having
the
the
read
read
through
through
cache
cache
policy
policy
here,
here,
and the
and the
expiration
expiration
time
time
has
has
not
not
been
been
hit,
hit,
and it's
and it's
the
the
same
same
old
old
stale
stale
data
data
which was
which
at
was
the
at the
time of
time of
creation,
creation,
then
then
this
this
value, the
value, the
wrong
wrong
value will
value
be
will be
returned to
returned
the
to the
user.
user.
So
So
this is
this
the
is the
issue
issue
with the
with the
stale
stale
data.
data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
the
the
data
data
store in
store in
cache
cache
is
is
challenging.
challenging.
Okay.
Okay.
Maintaining
Maintaining
consistency
consistency
between the
between the
data
data
store and
store and
cache is
cache is
challenging.
challenging.
For
For
further
further
details,
details,
refer to
refer
the
to the
paper
paper
titled
titled
Scaling
Scaling
Memcache
Memcache
at
at
Facebook.
Facebook.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
that's
another
another
research
research
paper.
paper.
I'm
I'm
thinking
thinking
after
after
doing the
doing the
chapter,
chapter,
I
I
can
can
also have
also
a
have a
separate
separate
series where
series
I
where I
go
go
over
over
these
these
technical
technical
papers
papers
and
and
blogs,
blogs,
and I
and I
read
read
through
through
them and
them and
try
try
to
to
make
make
sense of
sense of
them.
them.
Okay.
Okay.
Mitigating
Mitigating
failures.
failures.
Mitigating
Mitigating
failures. A
failures. A
single
single
cache
cache
server
server
represents a
represents a
potential
potential
single
single
point of
point of
failure,
failure,
SPOF,
SPOF,
which I
which I
was
was
also
also
talking
talking
about
about
earlier.
earlier.
Defined
Defined
in
in
Wikipedia as
Wikipedia as
follows:
follows:
a
a
single
single
point of
point of
failure is
failure is
part of a
part of a
system
system
that,
that,
if
if
it
it
fails,
fails,
will
will
stop the
stop the
entire
entire
system
system
from
from
working.
working.
As a
As a
result,
result,
multiple
multiple
cache
cache
servers
servers
across
across
different
different
data
data
centers are
centers are
recommended
recommended
to
to
avoid
avoid
FOF.
FOF.
Okay.
Okay.
Single
Single
point of
point of
failure.
failure.
Another
Another
recommended
recommended
approach
approach
is
is
to
to
over
over
provision
provision
the
the
required
required
memory
memory
by
by
certain
certain
percentages.
percentages.
This
This
provides a
provides a
buffer
buffer
as the
as the
memory
memory
usage
usage
increases.
increases.
Okay.
Okay.
Eviction
Eviction
policy.
policy.
Once the
Once the
cache is
cache is
full,
full,
any
any
requests
requests
to
to
add
add
items to
items
the
to the
cache
cache
might
might
cause
cause
existing
existing
items to
items
be
to be
removed.
removed.
Think
Think
of
of
cache
cache
as
as
sort of
sort of
a
a
pigeonhole.
pigeonhole.
For
For
example,
example,
there
there
can be
can be
only
only
3
3
cross
cross
3
3
9
9
things in
things in
a
a
pigeonhole
pigeonhole
thing.
thing.
Uh,
Uh,
then
then
how
how
it
it
would
would
go
go
on
on
about
about
is,
is,
all
all
right.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pigeonhole,
pigeonhole
as I
as I
was
was
speaking,
speaking
would
would
be
be
something
something
like
like
this.
this.
And
And
what
what
would
would
happen
happen
is,
is,
as
as
all of
all of
them
them
are
are
having
having
values in
values in
them,
them,
so
so
that
that
means
means
cache
cache
is
is
full.
full.
Now,
Now,
if the
if the
cache is
cache is
full,
full,
now
now
when a
when a
call
call
comes
comes
for
for
the
the
addition of
addition of
a
a
new
new
resource
resource
into
into
them,
them,
then what
then what
happens?
happens?
It
It
might
might
remove
remove
the
the
item
item
that
that
was
was
there.
there.
So,
So,
which
which
item to
item to
remove?
remove?
Now,
Now,
this is
this
the
is the
policy
policy
of
of
eviction.
eviction.
Now,
Now,
in
in
this
this
case, it
case, it
might
might
happen
happen
that
that
0,
zero,
1,
one,
2,
two,
3,
three,
4,
four,
5,
five
6, 7, 8. So
So
least
least
recently
recently
used
used
is
is
one of
one
the
of the
policy
policy
where
where
when
when
doing the
doing the
eviction,
eviction,
the
the
one
one
that
that
is
is
least
least
recently
recently
used is
used
the
is the
one
one
removed.
removed.
But
But
there are
there are
other
other
policies
policies
as well,
as well,
such
such
as
as
least
least
frequently
frequently
used
used
as
as
well
well
as
as
first in,
first in,
first
first
out.
out.
So in
So in
first in,
first in,
first out
first out
policy,
policy,
what would
what would
happen
happen
is
is
this
this
one
one
will
will
be the
be the
one
one
that's
that's
going to
going to
get
get
removed
removed
because
because
this
this
came
came
first.
first.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
this
this
is
is
all
all
about
about
the
the
eviction
eviction
policies
policies
and
and
how
how
would they
would they
work
work
when they
when they
would
would
work
work
and
and
what are
what
the
are the
different
different
options for
options for
them.
them.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
that was
that was
about
about
eviction
eviction
policy.
policy.
Now
Now
other
other
eviction
eviction
policies,
policies,
there's
there's
LFU
LFU
or
or
FFO
FFO
also
also
exists,
exists,
and
and
they
they
can be
can be
adopted
adopted
to
to
satisfy
satisfy
different
different
use
use
cases.
cases.
Again,
Again,
cache
cache
is
is
sort of a
sort of a
topic
topic
that is
that is
very
very
nuanced,
nuanced
context or
context or
application
application
heavy.
heavy.
One of
One of
those
those
things
things
where
where
the
the
usual
usual
go-to
go-to
answer
answer
is
is
it
it
depends.
depends.
What is
What
your
is your
use
use
case?
case?
What is
What
your
is your
business
business
requirements? What
requirements? What
is the
is the
criticality of
criticality
the
of the
value
value
that
that
you
you
are
are
having in
having
the
in the
cache?
cache?
How
How
frequently is
frequently
it
is it
updated?
updated?
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
that
that
are
are
some of
some
the
of the
things
things
that you
that you
need
need
to
to
ponder
ponder
over
over
before you
before you
decide
decide
what your
what your
policy
policy
should
should
be.
be.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
finally,
finally,
we are
we are
done with
done with
cache.
cache.
Now
Now
moving to
moving to
CDN,
CDN,
Content
Content
Delivery
Delivery
Network.
Network.
You
You
might have
might have
heard
heard
or
or
have
have
seen
seen
that
that
when you
when you
hover
hover
over
over
images
images
on
on
desktop,
desktop
on
on
Facebook or
Facebook or
some other
some other
website, you
website, you
might see
might
a
see a
URL of
URL of
Akimai
Akimai
or
or
some
some
other
other
things
things
like
like
Cloudflare.
Cloudflare.
This
This
is
is
sort
sort
of, I'm
of,
not
I'm not
going
going
into a
into a
lot of
lot of
depth,
depth,
but
but
this is
this is
what
what
the
the
CDNs are
CDNs
all
are all
about. Those
about.
are
Those are
the
the
pretty
pretty
popular
popular
known
known
CDNs,
CDNs,
and
and
just
just
for
for
just to
just to
pique
pique
interest from
interest
this
from this
topic,
topic,
the
the
reason
reason
or the
or the
criticality of
criticality of
CDNs
CDNs
in
in
today's
today's
internet
internet
infrastructure
infrastructure
is
is
as
as
serious
serious
as
as
you
you
might have
might have
heard.
heard.
When
When
Cloudflare
Cloudflare
goes
goes
down, the
down, the
internet
internet
goes
goes
down, and
down, and
everything,
everything,
all
all
hell
hell
breaks
breaks
loose.
loose.
So
So
that
that
important
important
to
to
current
current
infrastructure
infrastructure
is
is
CDNs.
CDNs.
So
So
what
what
is a
is a
CDN?
CDN?
Now a
Now a
CDN is a
CDN is a
network of
network of
geographically
geographically
dispersed
dispersed
servers
servers
which
which
are
are
used
used
to
to
deliver
deliver
static
static
content.
content.
Now
Now
your
your
Netflixes of
Netflixes
the
of the
world
world
might be
might be
using
using
these,
these,
and
and
so
so
on.
on
Your
your
reels and
reels and
other
other
things as
things
well.
as well.
So
So
CDN
CDN
servers
servers
cache
cache
static
static
content
content
like
like
images,
images,
videos,
videos,
JavaScript
JavaScript
files,
files,
etc.
etc.
Dynamic
Dynamic
content
content
caching is
caching
a
is a
relatively
relatively
new
new
concept
concept
and
and
beyond the
beyond the
scope
scope
of this
of this
book.
book.
Okay,
Okay,
it
it
enables the
enables the
caching of
caching of
HTML
HTML
pages
pages
that are
that are
based on
based on
request
request
path,
path,
query
query
strings,
strings,
cookies,
cookies,
and
and
request
request
headers.
headers.
Refer to
Refer
the
to the
article
article
mentioned in
mentioned in
reference
reference
material for
material for
more
more
about this.
about this.
This
This
book
book
focuses
focuses
on
on
how
how
to
to
use
use
CDN to
CDN to
cache
cache
static
static
content.
content.
Okay, for
Okay, for
dynamic
dynamic
content, you
content, you
gotta
gotta
go
go
over
over
there
there
on the
on the
reference
reference
that is
that is
shared.
shared.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
here is
here
how
is how
CDN
CDN
works at
works
a
at a
high
high
level.
level.
When a
When a
user
user
visits the
visits the
website,
website,
a
a
CDN
CDN
server
server
closest to
closest
the
to the
user
user
will
will
deliver
deliver
static
static
content
content
to the
to the
user.
user.
Intuitively, the
Intuitively, the
further
further
users are
users are
from
from
the
the
CDN
CDN
servers,
servers,
the
the
slower the
slower the
website
website
loads. For
loads. For
example, if
example, if
CDN
CDN
servers are
servers are
in
in
San
San
Francisco,
Francisco,
users in
users in
LA
LA
will
will
get
get
content
content
faster than
faster than
users in
users in
Europe.
Europe.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
below
below
figure is
figure
a
is a
great
great
example
example
that
that
shows
shows
how
how
CDN
CDN
improves
improves
load
load
time.
time.
Okay.
Okay.
There are
There are
two
two
clients.
clients.
There is
There
a
is a
CDN,
CDN,
then
then
there
there
is
is
origin,
origin,
then
then
image.
image.
All right.
All right.
Let's
Let's
see
see
what
what
do they
do they
mean by
mean by
that.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
First,
First,
user
user
tries to
tries to
get
get
image
image
PNG
PNG
by
by
using a
using a
image
image
URL.
URL.
Okay.
Okay.
If
If
not,
not,
okay.
okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Huh. So the
So the
URL's
URL's
domain is
domain is
provided by
provided by
the
the
CDN
CDN
provider.
provider.
The
The
following
following
two
two
image
image
URLs are
URLs are
sampled,
sampled,
used to
used to
demonstrate
demonstrate
what
what
image
image
URLs
URLs
look
look
like
like
on
on
Amazon and
Amazon and
Akamai
Akamai
CDNs.
CDNs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
this
the
is
one
the
I
one
was
I was
talking
talking
about,
about,
Akamai.
Akamai.
This
This
is
is
the
the
one.
one.
Yep,
Yep,
correct.
correct.
So
So
that's
that's
Akamai.
Akamai.
And
And
user A
user A
tries
tries
to
to
get
get
image.png.
image.png.
All
All
right.
right.
by
by
using an
using an
image
image
URL.
URL.
The
The
URL's
URL's
domain is
domain is
provided
provided
by
by
the
the
CDN
CDN
provider.
provider.
The
The
following
following
to
to
if the
if the
CDN
CDN
server
server
does
does
not have
not have
image in
image
the
in the
cache,
cache,
the
the
CDN
CDN
server
server
requests the
requests the
file
file
from
from
the
the
origin.
origin.
If
If
not
not
in
in
CNN,
CNN,
get
get
from the
from the
server.
server.
This
This
is the
is the
CDN
CDN
that's
that's
sitting in
sitting in
between.
between.
Then
Then
again
again
read
read
through
through
example,
example,
store
store
image
image
in
in
CDN,
CDN,
return the
return the
image.
image.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
far
far
so
so
good.
good.
What
What
happens
happens
next?
next?
If the
If the
CDN
CDN
server
server
does
does
not,
not,
the
the
origin
origin
returns
returns
image to
image
the
to the
CDN
CDN
server.
server.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
good.
What
What
happens
happens
next?
next?
The
The
origin
origin
returns
returns
image,
image,
which
which
includes
includes
optional
optional
HTTP
HTTP
header
header
time to
time to
live,
live,
which
which
describes
describes
how
how
long
long
the
the
image is
image is
cached.
cached.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
CDN
CDN
caches the
caches the
image and
image and
returns it
returns
to
it to
user
user
A.
A.
Okay,
Okay,
done.
done.
The
The
image
image
remains
remains
cached in
cached
the
in the
CDN
CDN
until
until
the
the
TTL
TTL
expires.
expires.
TTL is
TTL is
time
time
to
to
live.
live.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Now,
before
before
that
that
TTL
TTL
time
time
limit is
limit is
hit,
hit,
what
what
happens is
happens is
there is
there
some
is some
other
other
user,
user,
B,
B,
that
that
is
is
calling to
calling to
get the
get the
same
same
image.
image.
Now the
Now the
image
image
is
is
written
written
from the
from the
cache as
cache
the
as the
TTL
TTL
has
has
not
not
expired
expired
here.
yet.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
this is
this
the
is the
one
one
that
that
they
they
call
call
and they
and they
also
also
get the
get the
image.
image.
And in
And in
this
this
case,
case,
there
there
is
is
no
no
call
call
to the
to the
server
server
because it's
because it's
already
already
present in
present
the
in the
cache.
cache.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
Makes
Makes
sense so
sense so
far.
far.
Let's
Let's
move
move
on.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let me
let me
get rid
get
of
rid of
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the
So the
cache.
cache,
Okay,
okay,
image is
image is
returned.
returned.
Considerations
Considerations
of
of
using a
using a
content
content
delivery
delivery
network.
network.
Cost.
Cost.
CDNs are
CDNs are
run by
run by
third-party
third-party
providers, and
providers
you
and
are
you are
charged for
charged for
data
data
transfers
transfers
in
in
and
and
out of
out
the
of the
CDN.
CDN.
Caching
Caching
infrequently
infrequently
used
used
assets
assets
provides
provides
no
no
significant
significant
benefits, so
benefits,
you
so you
should
should
consider
consider
moving them
moving them
out of
out
the
of the
CDN.
CDN.
Okay.
Okay.
Setting an
Setting an
appropriate
appropriate
cache
cache
expiry.
expiry.
This
This
is
is
very
very
important.
important.
For
For time
time-sensitive
sensitive
content,
content,
setting a
setting a
cache
cache
expiry
expiry
time is
time is
important.
important.
The
The
cache
cache
expiry
expiry
time
time
should
should
neither be
neither be
too
too
long
long
nor too
nor too
short.
short.
If it is
If it
too
is too
long, the
long, the
content
content
might no
might no
longer be
longer be
fresh and
fresh
it
and it
might
might
be
be
incorrect.
incorrect.
If it is
If it
too
is too
short,
short,
it can
it can
cause
cause
repeat
repeat
reloading of
reloading of
content
content
from
from
origin
origin
servers
servers
to the
to the
CDN.
CDN.
And
And
as
as
highlighted in the
highlighted in the
point
point
1,
one,
the
the
cost
cost
model
model
for
for
these
these
are
are
the
the
data
data
coming
coming
in
in
and
and
out,
out,
coming in
coming
and
in and
going
going
out of
out
the
of the
CDN.
CDN.
So you
So you
might
might
not
not
want to
want to
like
like
rack up
rack up
your
your
bills.
bills.
If it
If
is
it
too
is too
short, it
short,
can
it can
cause
cause
repeat
repeat
reloading of
reloading of
content,
content,
and
and
reloading is
reloading
like
is like
fetching
fetching
from the
from the
origin
origin
servers.
servers.
Now,
Now,
content
content
delivery
delivery
network
network
fallback.
fallback.
You
You
should
should
consider
consider
how
how
your
your
website
website
application
application
copes
copes
with
with
content
content
delivery
delivery
network
network
failure.
failure.
If there
If
is
there
a
is a
temporary
temporary
CDN
CDN
outage,
outage,
client
client
should be
should be
able to
able to
detect the
detect the
problem and
problem and
request
request
resources
resources
from the
from the
origin.
origin.
When a
When a
user
user
A
A
is
is
calling for
calling for
image.png,
image.png,
if the
if the
CDN
CDN
gives
gives
a
a
timeout,
timeout,
there
there
might
might
or
or
is
is
giving
giving
wrong
wrong
responses, then
responses,
there
then there
might be
might be
some
some
invalidation or
invalidation or
the
the
override
override
that should
that
kick
should kick
in,
in,
or
or
some
some
config
config
driven
driven
change
change
that
that
allows
allows
us to
us to
define if
define
the
if the
CDNs are
CDNs are
down or
down or
not.
not.
And
And
if
if
CDNs are
CDNs are
down,
down,
then
then
the
the
request is
request is
routed
routed
to
to
some
some
other
other
place,
place,
and
and
then we
then we
also
also
have
have
the
the
provisioning of
provisioning of
resources so
resources
that
so
we
that we
scale up
scale
our
up our
server
server
to
to
serve the
serve the
requests which
requests
are
which are
now
now
directly
directly
hitting to
hitting
the
to the
server
server
instead
instead
of
of
getting
getting
cached
cached
and
and
less
less
load
load
coming to
coming
the
to the
server.
server.
Now
Now
they
they
will
will
be
be
coming to
coming
the
to the
server.
server.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
invalidating
invalidating
files.
files.
CDN
CDN
fallback.
fallback.
That
That
was all
was all
about
about
CDN
CDN
fallback.
fallback.
Now,
Now,
invalidating
invalidating
files. You
files.
can
You can
remove a
remove a
file
file
from the
from the
CDN
CDN
before
before
it
it expires
expires by
by
performing
performing
one of
one
the
of the
following
following
operations.
operations. Invalidate
Invalidate
the
the content
content
delivery
delivery
network
network
object
object
using
using
API provided by the vendors. Okay. Use object versioning to serve a different version of the object. To version an object, you can add a parameter to the URL, such as a version number. For example, version number 2 is added to the query string image.png v equals to 2. Okay. The
The
below
below
figure
figure
shows
shows
the
the
design
design
after the
after the
CDN
CDN
and
and
cache are
cache are
added.
added.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
far
far
so
so
good.
good.
Load
Load
balancer,
balancer,
web
web
tier,
tier,
data
data
tier.
tier.
Then
Then
there
there
is
is
cache
cache
component
component
as
as
well.
well.
Static
Static
assets,
assets,
JavaScript,
JavaScript,
CSS,
CSS,
images,
images,
etc.
etc.
no
are no
longer
longer
served by
served by
web
web
servers.
servers.
They
They
are
are
fetched
fetched
from the
from the
CDN
CDN
for
for
better
better
performance.
performance.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
database
database
load
load
is
is
lightened
lightened
by
by
caching
caching
data.
data.
All
All
right.
right.
What's
What's
next?
next?
Stateless
Stateless
web
web
tier.
tier.
Now
Now
it is
it is
time to
time to
consider
consider
scaling the
scaling the
web
web
tier
tier
horizontally.
horizontally.
For
For
this,
this,
we
we
need to
need to
move.
move.
For
For
this, we
this, we
need to
need to
move
move
state.
state.
For
For
instance,
instance,
user
user
session
session
data
data
out of
out
the
of the
web
web
tier.
tier.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
how
how
would
would
this
this
work?
work?
Let's
Let's
see.
see.
A
A
good
good
practice
practice
is to
is to
store
store
session
session
data in
data
the
in the
persistent
persistent
storage
storage
such
such
as
as
RDMMS
RDMMS
or
or
NoSQL.
NoSQL.
Each
Each
web
web
server
server
in the
in the
cluster
cluster
can
can
access
access
state
state
data
data
from
from
databases.
databases.
All
All
right.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
we were
we were
going
going
through
through
stateless web
stateless web
tier and
tier and
stateful
stateful
architecture
architecture
here.
here.
And
And
I
I
am
am
somehow
somehow
not
not
feeling
feeling
very
very
confident
confident
in
in
what
what
they
they
are
are
trying to
trying
say.
to
I
say. I
get
get
what
what
is
is
stateless
stateless
and
and
what is
what is
stateful,
stateful,
but
but
still
still
I
I
want to
want to
probe it
probe it
for
for
a bit
a
more
bit more
details.
details.
That's
That's
why
why
I'm
I'm
going
going
over
over
this
this
right
right
now.
now.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
there's a
there's a
difference
difference
between
between
stateful and
stateful and
stateless
stateless
servers,
servers,
correct?
correct?
Real
Real
scenario,
scenario,
stateful
stateful
architecture.
architecture.
Imagine you're
Imagine you're
shopping an
shopping an
e-commerce
e-commerce
site
site
like
like
Amazon,
Amazon,
okay,
okay,
with
with
stateful
stateful
servers.
servers.
All
All
browser,
browser,
load
load
balancer,
balancer,
then
then
server
server
A
A
remembers our
remembers our
cart.
cart.
Now
Now
we add
we add
iPhone to
iPhone to
cart.
cart.
Load
Load
balancer
balancer
sends
sends
us
us
to
to
server
server
A.
A.
Server A
Server
stores in
stores in
memory.
memory.
User's
User's
cart
cart
contains
contains
this
this
device.
device.
Request
Request
2.
2.
We add
We add
reports to
reports to
cart.
cart.
Load
Load
balancer
balancer
sends us
sends
to
us to
server
server
B
B
for
for
request
request
2.
2.
And now
And
the
now the
server
server
B
B
does
does
not
not
know
know
about our
about our
cart.
cart.
Now
Now
iPhone
iPhone
has
has
disappeared
disappeared
from the
from the
cart.
cart.
This is
This
the
is the
problem.
problem.
Shopping
Shopping
cart is
cart is
stuck on
stuck on
server A.
server A.
If you
If you
get
get
routed to
routed to
server B,
server B,
you
you
lose
lose
everything.
everything.
How
How
company
company
fix this
fix this
badly?
badly?
They
They
use
use
sticky
sticky
sessions,
sessions,
also
also
called
called
session
session
affinity.
affinity.
Load
Load
balancer
balancer
user
user
123
123
always
always
pulls to
pulls to
server
server
A.
A.
Now
Now
this
this
can
can
internally
internally
also
also
have
have
more
more
repercussions
repercussions
as
as
it
it
can
can
cause
cause
issues
issues
such
such
as
as
when
when
server A
server A
crashes,
crashes,
user
user
123
123
or
or
all of
all
the
of the
users
users
lose
lose
their
their
cart.
cart.
Okay,
Okay,
user A
user A
gets
gets
overloaded
overloaded
while
while
server A
server A
gets
gets
overloaded or
overloaded or
server
server
B is
B is
idle.
idle.
Okay.
Okay.
Also
Also
hard to
hard to
do
do deployments for new features. And this is not really horizontal scale. Now, stateless architecture, the solution. Move the state to a shared storage that all servers can access. For example, browser calls load balancer, then server A, B, C are the ones that exist. Then they have a shared session store, which can be a cache data store, or a database. Now, same scenario of e-commerce. You add iPhone 15, and while doing so, you went to server A. Now, when you add AirPods, what server B, which is a different server, does is it fetches, get me the cart of user A. Now, when it gets the cart of user 123, what it sees is it already contains iPhone 15. So it appends to it. Now, because of this, we have gone stateless. We are not depending on those details. So a bit more into what exactly is a state. State is any data the server needs to remember about you between requests. Shopping cart contents, login sessions, user preferences, multi-step forms, recently viewed items, all of them. Now,
Now,
stateful example. There is a
there is a
REST
REST
controller
controller
called
called
shopping
shopping
controller
controller
and
and
user
user
cards,
cards,
new
new
hash
hash
map we
map
are
we are
creating,
creating,
and
and
add
add
to
to
cart,
cart,
request
request
param,
param,
user
user
card
card,
compute if
compute if
absent,
absent,
then
then
new
new
array
array
list.
list.
If this
If this
server
server
restarts or
restarts or
user hits
user hits
another
another
server,
server,
data is
data is
gone.
gone.
That
That
was
was
the
the
first
first
case.
case.
Stateless
Stateless
example.
example.
Redis,
Redis,
we are
we are
using
using
Redis,
Redis,
and what
and
we
what we
do
do
is
is
string
string
key
key
cart
cart
user
user
ID
ID
list
list
item
item
Redis
Redis
template
template
dot
dot
get the
get the
value
value
for
for
this
this
key.
key.
If
If
cart
cart
null,
null,
then
then
new,
new,
create
create
new
new
and
and
add it
add
to
it
the
to the
cart
cart
and
and
store it
store it
in the
in the
Redis.
Redis.
Okay.
Okay.
Storage
Storage
options for
options for
session
session
data.
data.
With their
With their
use
use
cases
cases
and
and
examples.
examples.
Redis,
Redis,
fast,
fast,
use case
use case
temporary
temporary
data,
data,
sessions,
sessions,
cards,
cards,
etc.
etc.
Login
Login
token,
token,
shopping
shopping
carts
carts
are the
are the
examples.
examples.
Okay.
Okay.
Man
Man
cache.
cached.
Simple
Simple
key
key
value
value
cache,
cache,
session
session
data,
data,
API
API
response
response
cache
cache
are
are
some of
some
the
of the
use
use
cases.
cases.
PostgreSQL,
PostgreSQL,
MySQL,
MySQL,
permanent
permanent
transactional
transactional
data
data
for
for
the
the
storage.
storage.
User
User
profiles,
profiles,
order
order
history,
history,
amount
amount
paid,
paid,
refund
refund
done,
done,
things like
things like
that.
that.
DynamoDB
DynamoDB
Cassandra,
Cassandra,
high
high
scale
scale
distributed
distributed
NoSQL,
NoSQL,
user
user
session
session
at
at
massive
massive
scale.
scale.
That's
That's
what
what
DynamoDB
DynamoDB
Cassandra
Cassandra
would do.
would do.
Redis for
Redis for
sessions,
sessions,
database for
database for
permanent
permanent
data.
data.
That is
That
the
is the
most
most
common
common
pattern
pattern
that
that
is
is
followed as
followed
a
as a
norm
norm
throughout the
throughout the
industry.
industry.
Okay,
Okay,
moving
moving
on.
on.
Real
Real
world
world
example.
example.
How
How
Netflix
Netflix
does it.
does it.
Netflix has
Netflix has
millions of
millions of
users
users
watching
watching
simultaneously.
simultaneously.
Here is
Here is
how they
how they
handle it.
handle it.
User
User
watches
watches
Stranger
Stranger
Things
Things
episode
episode
3
3
pauses
pauses
at
at
40 to
40 to
30. Now,
Now,
what
what
is the
is the
journey of
journey of
this
this
request is
request is
request
request
flow.
flow.
User's
User's
browser
browser
calls
calls
AWS
AWS
load
load
balancer.
balancer.
Load
Load
balancer
balancer
redirects
redirects
it
it
to
to
any
any
available web
available web
server.
server.
Web
Web
server
server
checks
checks
Redis or
Redis or
Cassandra.
Cassandra.
What
What
was the
was the
timestamp at
timestamp at
which
which
for
for
this
this
episode the
episode the
user
user
paused
paused
from
from
where we
where
need
we need
to
to
resume it.
resume it.
Redis
Redis
or
or
whatever
whatever
their
their
cache
cache
data
data
storage,
storage,
it
it
returns
returns
that
that
user
user
for
for
this
this
episode
episode
was
was
I am
I am
having
having
this
this
value of
value of
timestamp
timestamp
in
in
my
my
database.
database.
Web
Web
server
server
returns
returns
video
video
stream
stream
from that
from that
timestamp.
timestamp.
So
So
what
what
has
has
happened
happened
here
here
is
is
while the
while the
experience of
experience
the
of the
user has
user has
also
also
increased,
increased,
they
they
are
are
seeking or
seeking or
the
the
video is
video is
starting from
starting from
40 to
40 to
30.
30.
But what
But
has
what has
also
also
happened is
happened
the
is the
bandwidth or
bandwidth
the
or the
resources
resources
needed
needed
to
to
load
load
or
or
to
to
send
send
over the
over the
network
network
the
the
video
video
till
till
40
40
to
to
29
29
has been
has been
avoided.
avoided.
So
So
that is
that
a
is a
cost
cost
save
save
itself,
itself,
right?
right?
What
What
about
about
server
server
crash?
crash?
That's
That's
not an
not an
issue as
issue
well.
as well.
Or
Or
when there
when
is
there
a
is a
spike
spike
when
when
some
some
new
new
TV
TV
series
series
comes
comes
along
along
or
or
something
something
like
like
that.
that.
Server cache is not a problem, as request goes to a different server which looks up the same Cassandra data and tells the web server to play the video or resource from that point onwards. This is the reason why we can pause on our laptop and resume on our phone. Netflix can deploy new code without you losing your timestamp. Netflix can handle millions of concurrent users. The mental model. Think of it like this: stateful waiters with notebooks. Waiter A who came to take your order remembers your order in their notebook. If you give an order to waiter A, but if you ask waiter B, where is the dish that I ordered? Waiter B might look at you cluelessly, or in this case, what waiter B might do is they can either assume or they can either assume or they can ask you that what order did you give that order to me or something like that. Or if waiter A forgets after writing it in a book, and or if they goes on a break, then the order is lost. Stateless is waiters with shared kitchen system. Your order is punched in into the computer system. Any waiter can do a get call, and you can ask them what is the status, how long it's going to take. If one waiter goes on a break, but still in the kitchen where it's being cooked on the assembly line, it's still there. They can see that what is the state of this, and some other waiter can resume serving that particular order to you. Just replace waiter with servers. That is the whole thing we are trying to draw parallels with here. Okay. The
The
servers are
servers
the
are the
waiters, and
waiters, and
database is
database
a
is a
shared
shared
kitchen
kitchen
system.
system.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
far,
far,
so
so
good.
good.
So
So
now,
now,
why
why
this
this
matters
matters
for
for
horizontal
horizontal
scaling?
scaling?
Okay.
Okay.
Without
Without
stateless
stateless
architecture,
architecture,
you
you
can't
can't
truly
truly
scale
scale
horizontally.
horizontally.
Correct.
Correct.
Stateful
Stateful
server
server
1
one
handling
handling
10,000
10,000
users
users
stuck
stuck
to it,
to it,
overloaded.
overloaded.
Server 2
Server 2
handling
handling
100
100
users
users
stuck to
stuck
it,
to it,
idle.
idle.
Can't add
Can't add
server
server
3
3
because
because
existing
existing
servers are
servers are
stuck.
stuck.
Existing
Existing
users are
users are
stuck to
stuck to
servers
servers
1
1
and
and
2.
2.
Stateless
Stateless
server
server
1
one
handling
handling
any
any
incoming
incoming
request,
request.
server 2
Server 2
handling
handling
any
any
request,
request.
server
Server
3
3
handling
handling
any
any
request. We
request. We
can
can
add,
add.
we can
We can
scale
scale
up,
up,
scale
scale
down,
down,
add
add
more
more
server,
server,
reduce
reduce
servers
servers
if
if
it's
it's
actually
actually
stateless.
stateless.
Now,
Now,
quick
quick
corrections to
corrections to
other
other
concepts.
concepts.
Microservices.
Microservices.
Each
Each
service
service
should be
should be
stateless so
stateless
you
so
can
you can
scale it
scale it
independently.
independently.
There is
There is
no
no
dependency
dependency
on some
on some
other
other
service.
service.
12
12
factor
factor
apps.
apps.
Processes are
Processes are
stateless and
stateless and
share
share
nothing.
nothing.
Okay.
Okay.
Docker,
Docker
Kubernetes
Kubernetes
containers are
containers are
ephemeral,
ephemeral,
can
can
die
die
anytime,
anytime,
must be
must be
stateless.
stateless.
Cap
Cap
theorem.
theorem.
Moving
Moving
storage to
storage to
distributed
distributed
storage
storage
introduces
introduces
new
new
challenges.
challenges.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
Why
can't we
can't we
just
just
use
use
sticky
sticky
sessions
sessions
forever?
forever?
Because we
Because we
cannot,
cannot,
when a
when
new
a new
feature
feature
is
is
deployed,
deployed,
then
then
some of
some
the
of the
users
users
might
might
get a
get a
timeout or
timeout or
some
some
other
other
issue.
issues.
Building a
Building a
chat
chat
application,
application,
what
what
data
data
would be
would be
state?
state?
Where
Where
would you
would you
store?
store?
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
this
that
was
was
about
about
stateful and
stateful and
stateless.
stateless.
Now
Now
going
going
back
back
to
to
system
system
design.
design.
All
All
right,
right.
stateful and
Stateful and
stateless.
stateless.
Okay.
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 So a
So a
stateful
stateful
server
server
and
and
stateless
stateless
servers
servers
have
have
some
some
key
key
differences.
differences.
A
A
stateful
stateful
server
server
remembers
remembers
client
client
data
data
from one
from one
request to
request
the
to the
next.
next.
A
A
stateless
stateless
server
server
keeps no
keeps no
state
state
information.
information.
Server 1
Server 1
session
session
data
data
for
for
user A,
user A,
profile
profile
image for
image for
user A.
user A.
Server
Server
2
2
user
user
B.
B.
Server
Server
C
C
stores
stores
data for
data for
C.
C.
User
User
A
A
session
session
data and
data and
profile are
profile are
stored with
stored with
server
server
1.
1.
To
To
authenticate
authenticate
user
user
A,
A,
HTTP
HTTP
request
request
must be
must be
routed to
routed to
server
server
1.
1.
If
If
request is
request is
sent to
sent to
other
other
servers like
servers like
server
server
2,
2,
authentication
authentication
would
would
fail
fail
because
because
server 2
server
does
2
not
does not
contain
contain
user
user
A's
A's
session
session
data.
data.
Similarly,
Similarly,
all
all
HTTP
HTTP
requests
requests
from
from
B
B
to
to
server
server
2
2
and
and
all
all
from
from
C
C
to
to
server
server
3.
3.
The
The
issue
issue
is
is
that
that
every
every
request from
request
the
from the
same
same
client
client
must be
must be
routed to
routed
the
to the
same
same
server.
server.
This
This
can be
can be
done
done
with
with
sticky
sticky
sessions
sessions
in
in
most
most
load
load
balancers.
balancers.
However,
However,
this
this
adds
adds
the
the
overhead.
overhead.
Adding or
Adding or
removing
removing
servers is
servers is
much
much
more
more
difficult with
difficult
this
with this
approach.
approach.
It is
It is
also
also
challenging to
challenging to
handle
handle
server
server
failures.
failures.
Okay,
Okay,
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Stateless
Stateless
architecture.
architecture.
The
The
figure
figure
below
below
shows
shows
stateless
stateless
architecture.
architecture.
All
All
requests
requests
coming
coming
to
to
web
web
servers
servers
and
and
then they
then they
fetch a
fetch a
state.
state.
Okay.
Okay.
In the
In the
stateless
stateless
architecture,
architecture,
HTTP
HTTP
requests
requests
from
from
users
users
can be
can be
sent to
sent to
any
any
web
web
servers
servers,
which
which
fetch
fetch
state
state
data
data
from a
from a
shared
shared
data
data
store.
store.
State
State
data is
data is
stored in
stored
a
in a
shared
shared
data
data
store
store
and
and
kept
kept
out of
out
web
of web
servers. A
servers. A
stateless
stateless
system is
system is
simpler,
simpler,
more
more
robust,
robust,
and
and
scalable.
scalable.
Okay.
Okay.
The
The
figure
figure
below
below
shows the
shows the
updated
updated
design of
design
the
of the
stateless
stateless
web
web
tier.
tier.
Okay.
Okay.
DNS.
DNS.
Okay.
Okay.
Server,
Server,
cache,
cache,
NoSQL.
NoSQL.
Okay.
Okay.
Master,
Master,
slave.
slave.
Understood.
Understood.
All right.
All right.
All
All
right.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
Remove the
Remove the
session
session
data
data
out
out
of
of
the
the
web
web
tier
tier
and
and
store
store
them
them
in the
in the
persistent
persistent
data
data
store.
store.
The
The
shared
shared
data
data
store
store
could be a
could be a
relational
relational
database,
database,
memcached,
memcached,
Redis,
Redis,
NoSQL,
NoSQL,
etc.
etc.
The
The
NoSQL
NoSQL
data
data
store
store
is
is
chosen
chosen
as it
as
is
it is
easy to
easy to
scale.
scale.
Okay.
Okay.
Auto scaling
Autoscaling
means
means
adding or
adding or
removing
removing
web
web
servers
servers
automatically
automatically
based on
based
the
on the
traffic
traffic
load.
load.
Okay.
Okay.
After the
After the
state
state
data
data
is
is
removed
removed
out of
out
web
of web
servers,
servers,
auto scaling of
autoscaling
the
of
web
the web
tier
tier
is
is
easily
easily
achieved
achieved
by
by
adding or
adding or
removing
removing
servers
servers
based
based
on
on
traffic
traffic
load.
load.
Fair,
Fair,
fair.
fair.
Session
Session
data is
data is
moved
moved
out of
out
web
of web
tier.
tier.
Fair.
Fair.
Auto scale
Autoscale
horizontal has
horizontal has
been
been
achieved
achieved
for the
for
web
the web
tier
tier
because of
because of
that.
that.
Now
Now
all the
all the
requests
requests
can
can
come to
come to
any
any
server.
server.
They
They
either
either
hit
hit
the
the
cache
cache
or
or
they
they
get
get
the
the
user
user
data
data
of
of
cart,
cards,
etc.
etc.
from
from
NoSQL.
NoSQL.
After the
After the
state
state
data
data
is
is
removed
removed
out of
out of
web
web
servers,
servers,
autoscaling of
autoscaling
web
of web
tier
tier
is
is
easily
easily
achieved by
achieved by
adding or
adding or
removing
removing
servers
servers
based on
based
the
on the
load
load
that we
that
are
we are
experiencing.
experiencing.
Okay.
Okay.
Now
Now
our
our
website
website
grows
grows
rapidly
rapidly
and
and
attracts a
attracts a
significant
significant
number of
number of
users
users
internationally.
internationally.
To improve the
Improve the
ability
ability
and
and
provide a
provide a
better
better
user
user
experience,
experience
time to
time to
load
load
across
across
wider
wider
geographical
geographical
areas,
areas.
supporting
Supporting
multiple
multiple
data
data
centers is
centers is
crucial.
crucial.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Hmm.
All
All
right.
right.
So
So
data
data
centers.
centers.
The
The
figure
figure
below
below
shows an
shows an
example
example
setup
setup
with
with
two
two
data
data
centers
centers
in
in
normal
normal
operation.
operation.
Users
Users
are
are
geographically
geographically
DNS
DNS
routed,
routed,
also
also
known as
known as
geo-routed,
geo-routed,
to the
to the
closest
closest
data
data
center
center
with a
with a
split
split
traffic
traffic
of
of
X% in
X% in
US
US
East
East
and
and
100
100
minus
minus
X% in
X% in
US
US
West.
West.
Geo
Geo
DNS is a
DNS is a
DNS
DNS
service
service
that
that
allows
allows
domain
domain
names to
names
be
to be
resolved
resolved
to
to
IP
IP
addresses
addresses
based
based
on
on
location
location
of the
of the
user.
user.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fair.
fair.
In the
In the
event
event
of
of
any,
any,
but
but
we need
we
to
need to
notice
notice
that
that
the
the
state
state
data
data
still
still
is
is
being
being
stored
stored
in
in
this
this
because,
because,
for
for
example,
example,
there are
there are
two
two
data
data
centers.
centers.
One
One
is
is
in
in
Mumbai
Mumbai
and
and
one is
one is
in
in
Amazon,
Amazon,
say
say
Singapore
Singapore
for
for
Asia.
Asia.
Now,
Now,
when
when
user
user
did
did
created
created
something or
something or
when the
when the
cart
cart
user
user
created,
created,
at
at
that
that
time they
time
were
they
in,
were in,
say,
say,
India,
India,
but they
but they
flew to
flew to
Singapore
Singapore
and
and
now
now
they
they
are
are
opening their
opening their
app
app
while they
while
are
they're
geographically
geographically
routed to
routed
the
to the
Singapore.
Singapore.
But
But
the
the
state
state
data,
data,
that is
that
the
is the
cart
cart
and
and
other
other
details for
details for
which
which
that
that
they
they
order,
order,
they
they
wanted to
wanted to
place an
place an
order,
order,
is
is
in
in
that
that
NoSQL,
NoSQL,
and that
and that
gets
gets
valid and
valid and
still
still
even if
even if
you
you
are
are
in
in
there,
there,
your
your
that
that
session or
session
the
or the
data of
data of
that
that
session
session
is
is
coming
coming
for you
for you
even though
even
you
though
are
you are
geographically
geographically
routed.
routed.
In the
In the
event
event
of
of
any
any
significant
significant
data
data
center
center
outage,
outage,
we
we
direct
direct
all
all
traffic to
traffic
a
to a
healthy
healthy
data
data
center.
center.
In
In
figure
figure
below,
below,
data
data
center
center
2
2
US
US
West is
West is
offline and
offline and
100% of
100% of
traffic is
traffic is
routed to
routed to
data
data
center
center
1,
1,
that
that
is
is
US
US
East.
East.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
DNS,
DNS,
okay.
okay.
User
User
calls,
calls,
CDN,
CDN,
okay.
okay.
US
US
West
West
is
is
down.
down.
All
All
data
data
comes
comes
to,
to,
okay.
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 Now,
Now,
several
several
technical
technical
challenges
challenges
must be
must be
resolved
resolved
to
to
achieve
achieve
multi-data
multi-data
center
center
setup.
setup.
Traffic
Traffic
indirection.
indirection.
Effective
Effective
tools are
tools are
needed to
needed to
direct
direct
traffic
traffic
to the
to the
correct
correct
data
data
center.
center.
GeoDNS
GeoDNS
can be
can be
used
used
to
to
direct
direct
traffic to
traffic
the
to the
nearest
nearest
data
data
center
center
depending on
depending on
where a
where a
user is
user is
located.
located.
Data
Data
synchronization.
synchronization.
Users
Users
from
from
different
different
regions
regions
could
could
use
use
different
different
local
local
databases
databases
or
or
cache.
cache.
In
In
failover
failover
cases,
cases,
traffic
traffic
might be
might be
routed to a
routed to a
data
data
center
center
where
where
data
data
is
is
unavailable.
unavailable.
A
A
common
common
strategy is
strategy
to
is to
replicate
replicate
data
data
across
across
multiple
multiple
data
data
centers.
centers.
A
A
previous
previous
study
study
shows
shows
how
how
Netflix
Netflix
implements
implements
async
async
multi-data
multi-data
center
center
replication.
replication.
Okay,
Okay,
this
this
is
is
one of
one
the
of the
reference.
reference.
Okay,
Okay,
test and
test and
deployment.
deployment.
With
With
multi-data
multi-data
center
center
setup,
setup,
it is
it is
important to
important to
test your
test your
website
website
application
application
at
at
different
different
locations.
locations.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Automated
Automated
deployment
deployment
tools are
tools are
vital
vital
to
to
keep
keep
services
services
consistent
consistent
through all
through all
data
data
centers.
centers.
All
All
right.
right.
To
To
further
further
scale
scale
our
our
system, we
system,
need
we
to
need to
decouple
decouple
different
different
components of
components
the
of the
system so
system so
they
they
can be
can be
scaled
scaled
independently.
independently.
Messaging
Messaging
queue
queue,
(MQ)
MQ,
is a
is a
key
key
strategy
strategy
employed by
employed by
many
many real
real-world
world
distributed
distributed
systems
systems
to
to
solve this
solve this
problem
problem
to
to
decoupling
decoupling
different
different
components.
components.
Okay,
Okay.
message
Message
queue.
queue.
A
A
message
message
queue is
queue
a
is a
durable
durable
component
component
stored in
stored in
memory
memory
that
that
supports
supports
async
async
communication.
communication.
Okay,
Okay.
it
It
serves as
serves
a
as a
buffer
buffer
and
and
distributes
distributes
async
async
requests.
requests.
The
The
basic
basic
architecture of
architecture
a
of a
message queue
message
is
queue is
simple.
simple.
Input
Input
services
services
called
called
producers
producers
or
or
publishers
publishers
create
create
messages
messages
and
and
publish
publish
them to
them
a
to a
message
message
queue.
queue.
Other
Other
services or
services or
servers
servers
called
called
consumers
consumer
subscribers
subscribers
connect to
connect
the
to the
queue
queue
and
and
perform
perform
actions
actions
defined by
defined
the
by the
messages.
messages.
All right.
All right.
Decoupling
Decoupling
makes
makes
the
the
message
message
queue a
queue a
preferred
preferred
architecture
architecture
for
for
building a
building a
scalable
scalable
and
and
reliable
reliable
application.
application.
With the
With the
message
message
queue,
queue,
the
the
producer
producer
can
can
post a
post a
message to
message
the
to the
queue
queue
when the
when the
consumer
consumer
is
is
unavailable to
unavailable to
process it.
process it.
With the
With the
message queue,
message
the
queue, the
post a
post a
message
message
when the
when the
okay.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
What
What
this
this
means
means
is
is
there is a
there is a
publisher of
publisher of
data
data
that
that
says
says
this is
this
the
is the
data,
data,
sends it
sends
to a
it to a
message
message
queue,
queue,
and there
and
is a
there is a
subscriber or
subscriber or
consumer
consumer
of the
of the
data.
data.
For
For
example,
example,
if
if
payment is
payment is
completed,
completed,
then
then
show
show
the
the
success
success
on
on
checkout to
checkout
the
to the
user.
user.
Now
Now
the
the
payment
payment
system
system
here,
here,
that is
that
the
is the
producer of
producer
the
of the
data
data
that
that
it
it
gets
gets
from
from
say
say
third
third
party
party
providers.
providers.
Now
Now
what it
what it
does
does
is
is
the
the
moment
moment
a
a
payment is
payment is
completed,
completed,
it
it
produces the
produces the
data
data
and it
and it
says
says
sends it
sends it
to a
to a
queue
queue
or a
or a
particular
particular
topic if
topic
it
if
is
it is
Kafka,
Kafka,
and
and
then it
then it
just
just
adds the
adds the
queue.
queue.
Now
Now
say,
say,
during this
during this
time,
time
when
when
the
the
payment
payment
happened
happened
for the
for the
user,
user,
checkout
checkout
was
was
experiencing
experiencing
an
an
intermittent
intermittent
timeout,
timeout,
some
some
error
error
on
on
checkout
checkout
service.
service.
Now,
Now,
what would
what would
happen
happen
during this
during this
time is
time is
there is
there
a
is a
queue
queue
which
which
has the
has the
message,
message,
and
and
that
that
message
message
is
is
not
not
read,
read
or
or
that
that
message is
message is
not
not
consumed
consumed
yet by
yet
the
by the
topic
topic
or
or
the
the
subscriber
subscriber
or the
or the
consumer
consumer
which is
which is
checkout
checkout
here.
here.
Now,
Now,
as soon
as soon
as
as
checkout
checkout
comes
comes
online,
online,
when
when
the
the
timeout
timeout
issue
issue
is
is
resolved,
resolved,
what will
what will
happen is
happen
it
is it
will
will
go
go
back to
back to
queue.
queue.
It
It
will
will
say,
say,
hey,
hey,
are
are
there
there
any
any
new
new
messages for
messages for
me?
me?
The
The
queue
queue
says,
says,
yes,
yes,
this
this
was the
was the
last
last
offset
offset
message
message
that you
that you
had
had
read.
read.
These are
These
the
are
new
the new
messages for
messages
you.
for you.
And
And
then
then
queue
queue
returns
returns
those
those
messages
messages
that
that
payment
payment
system
system
had
had
sent
sent
during the
during the
time of
time of
outage.
outage.
And
And
then
then
checkout
checkout
consumes
consumes
them
them
and then
and then
either
either
shows
shows
success
success
if
if
it's
it's
a
a
async
async
order,
order
or
or
it
it
realizes
realizes
that
that
the
the
session
session
has been
has been
timed
timed
out, and
out
then
and
it
then it
calls the
calls the
payment
payment
service to
service to
refund
refund
the
the
user
user
for
for
those
those
cases.
cases.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
That is what they mean by consumers can read messages from the queue even when producer is unavailable or vice versa, was the example that I gave. Now consider the following use case. Your
Your
app
app
supports
supports
photo
photo
customization,
customization,
including
including
cropping,
cropping,
sharpening,
sharpening,
blurring,
blurring,
etc.
etc.
All right.
Alright.
These
These
customization
customization
tasks
tasks
take
take
time to
time to
complete.
complete.
In the
In the
figure
figure
below,
below,
web
web
server
server
publishes
publishes
photo
photo
processing
processing
jobs to a
jobs to a
message
message
queue.
queue.
Photo
Photo
processing
processing
workers
workers
pick up
pick up
jobs from
jobs
the
from the
message
message
queue
queue
and
and
asynchronously
asynchronously
perform
perform
photo
photo
customization
customization
tasks
tasks
one
one
by
by
one.
one.
All right.
Alright.
The
The
producer and
producer and
consumer
consumer
can be
can be
scaled
scaled
independently,
independently,
which
which
is
is
valid.
valid.
When the
When the
size of
size
the
of the
queue
queue
becomes
becomes
large,
large,
more
more
workers are
workers are
added
added
to
to
reduce the
reduce the
processing
processing
time.
time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
are
we are
also
also
horizontally
horizontally
scaling
scaling
the
the
workers, I
workers, I
guess.
guess.
However,
However,
if the
if the
queue is
queue is
empty
empty
most of
most
the
of the
time, the
time, the
number of
number of
workers
workers
can be
can be
reduced,
reduced,
saving
saving
us
us
cost.
cost.
Okay,
Okay,
infra
infra
cost.
cost.
Logging,
Logging
metrics,
metrics
and
and
automation.
automation.
What
What
I
I
also
also
think
think
are
are
a
a
developer's
developer's
best
best
friend,
friend,
to be
to be
honest.
honest.
It
It
would
would
be
be
insanely
insanely
difficult
difficult
in
in
today's
today's
world or
world or
system if
system if
there
there
is
is
no
no
distributed
distributed
logging,
logging,
if
if
there is
there is
no
no
monitoring,
monitoring,
or
or
if
if
you
you
are
are
as an
as an
org
org
really
really
bad at
bad at
observability.
observability.
I
I
feel
feel
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
developer
developer
experience
experience
or
or
how
how
much you
much
are
you are
able
able
to
to
gauge,
gauge,
probe,
probe,
or
or
get
get
insights
insights
into
into
what's
what's
going
going
wrong
wrong
ha- has
has
to
to
greatly do
greatly do
with
with
how
how
good
good
as a
as a
team
team
or
or
as
as
a
a
developer
developer
you
you
are
are
at
at
understanding
understanding
logging,
logging,
how are
how
the
are the
metrics
metrics
working,
working,
what
what
is
is
the
the
APM
APM
looking
looking
for your
for your
service,
service,
things like
things
that.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
when
when
working with
working
a
with a
small
small
website
website
that
that
runs
runs
on
on
a
a
few
few
servers,
servers,
logging,
logging,
metrics,
metrics,
and
and
automation
automation
support
support
are
are
good
good
practices,
practices,
but
but
not a
not a
necessity.
necessity.
However,
However,
now
now
that
that
site
site
has
has
grown
grown
to
to
serve a
serve a
large
large
business,
business,
investing
investing
in
in
these
these
tools is
tools is
essential.
essential.
All
All
right.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that
looks
looks
good.
good.
Logging.
Logging.
Monitoring
Monitoring
error
error
logs is
logs is
important
important
because it
because it
helps us
helps
to
us to
identify
identify
errors
errors
and
and
problems in the
problems in the
system.
system.
You
You
can
can
monitor
monitor
error
error
logs
logs
at
at
per
per
server
server
level
level
or
or
use
use
tools to
tools to
aggregate
aggregate
them
them
to a
to a
centralized
centralized
service
service
for
for
each
each
search
search
and
and
viewing.
viewing.
Metrics
Metrics
collecting
collecting
different.
different.
Okay,
Okay,
about
about
metrics.
metrics.
So
So
collecting
collecting
different
different
type of
type of
metrics.
metrics.
This
This
allows us
allows
to
us to
gain
gain
business
business
insights, all
insights, all
right,
right,
fair,
fair,
and
and
understand the
understand the
health
health
status of
status
the
of the
system.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of
Some
the
of the
following
following
metrics are
metrics are
useful.
useful.
Host
Host
level
level
metrics.
metrics.
This is
This
like
is
your
like your
CPU
CPU
usage, your
usage, your
memory,
memory,
disk
disk
IO,
IO,
etc.
etc.
Aggregated
Aggregated
metrics, the
metrics, the
performance of
performance
the
of the
database
database
tier,
tier,
cache
cache
tier,
tier,
key
key
business
business
metrics,
metrics,
daily
daily
active
active
users,
users,
retention,
retention,
revenue,
revenue,
etc.
etc.
Automation.
Automation.
When a
When a
system
system
gets
gets
big
big
and
and
complex,
complex,
all
all
right,
right,
automation. When a
automation. When a
system
system
gets
gets
big and
big and
complex, we
complex,
need
we
to
need to
build or
build or
leverage
leverage
automation
automation
tools to
tools to
improve
improve
productivity.
productivity.
All
All
right,
right,
fair
fair
enough.
enough.
Continuous
Continuous
integration,
integration,
CI is
CI
a
is a
good
good
practice in
practice in
which
which
each
each
code
code
check-in
check-in
is
is
verified through
verified through
automation,
automation,
allowing
allowing
teams to
teams to
detect
detect
problems
problems
early.
early.
Besides
Besides
automating your
automating your
build,
build,
test,
test,
deploy,
deploy,
process,
process,
etc.,
etc.,
could
could
improve
improve
developer
developer
productivity
productivity
significantly.
significantly.
Okay.
Okay.
Adding
Adding
message
message
queues
queues
and
and
different
different
tools.
tools.
Now the
Now the
figure
figure
below
below
will
will
show the
show the
updated
updated
design with
design with
messaging
messaging
queue
queue
and
and
different
different
tools.
tools.
Due to
Due
the
to the
space
space
constraint,
constraint,
only
only
one
one
data
data
center is
center is
shown.
shown.
All
All
right.
right.
The
The
design
design
includes a
includes a
message
message
queue,
queue,
which
which
helps to
helps to
make the
make the
system
system
more
more
loosely
loosely
coupled
coupled
and
and
failure
failure
resilient.
resilient.
See,
See,
that
that
term is
term is
loosely
loosely
coupled
coupled
and
and
it is
it
a
is a
good
good
thing.
thing.
So
So
that
that
there are
there are
less
less
points of
points of
failure.
failure.
There are
There are
no
no
interconnectivity
interconnectivity
when we
when we
want to
want to
update
update
or
or
scale
scale
one of
one
the
of the
components,
components
and
and
makes
makes
our
our
system
system
more
more
robust,
robust,
more
more
failure
failure
resistance,
resistance,
more
more
better
better
hardened,
hardened,
I would
I would
say.
say.
So
So
logging,
logging,
monitoring,
monitoring,
metrics and
metrics and
automation
automation
tools
tools
are
are
also
also
included.
included.
All
All
right.
right.
Load
Load
balancer,
balancer,
web
web
servers.
servers.
There's a
There's a
message
message
queue
queue
for
for
async.
async
Whenever a
whenever a
message
message
comes
comes
to a
to a
message
message
queue
queue
by
by
the
the
user or
user or
web
web
server,
server,
that is
that
the
is the
publisher,
publisher.
it is
It is
going to
going
the
to the
worker.
worker.
Now there
Now
is a
there is
database, there
database,
is
there is
cache,
cache,
and all
and
of
all
those
of those
things
things
are
are
also
also
having a
having a
component of
component of
logging,
logging,
say
say
open
open
telemetry or
telemetry or
something like
something like
that,
that,
metrics
metrics
on your
on your
Datadog or
Datadog or
something like
something like
that for
that for
monitoring.
monitoring
and
and
automation. All
automation. All
right.
right.
As
As
data
data
goes
goes
every
every
day,
day,
your
your
database
database
gets
gets
more
more
overloaded.
overloaded.
It is
It is
time to
time to
scale
scale
that
that
data
data
tier.
tier.
Okay.
Okay.
Database
Database
scaling.
scaling.
There are
There are
two
two
broad
broad
approaches
approaches
for
for
database
database
scaling:
scaling:
vertical
vertical
scaling and
scaling and
horizontal
horizontal
scaling.
scaling.
Vertical
Vertical
scaling,
scaling,
also
also
known as
known as
scaling
scaling
up,
up,
is the
is the
scaling by
scaling by
adding more
adding more
CPU,
CPU,
RAM,
RAM,
disk,
disk,
etc.
etc.
Remember
Remember
in
in
the
the
starting of
starting of
the
the
live
live
stream,
stream,
I
I
gave an
gave an
example
example
of
of
your
your
gaming
gaming
PC.
PC.
You are
You are
adding it
adding it
in
in
things
things
into it.
into
You
it.
are
You are
changing
changing
from
from
16
16
gigs
gigs
of
of
RAM to
RAM to
32
32
gigs of
gigs of
RAM.
RAM.
That's
That's
you
you
doing a
doing a
vertical
vertical
scale of
scale
your
of your
gaming
gaming
PC.
PC.
There are some powerful database servers. According to Amazon RDS, Relational Database Service, you can get a database server with 24 TB of RAM. Just a sidetrack with the recent consumer get RAM prices and how the whole situation is going on. I think this is a very funny example now. RAM, you can get a database server with 24 TB of RAM. This kind of powerful database server would store and handle lots of data. Of course, it will. For example, Stack Overflow in 2013 had over 10 million monthly unique visitors, but it only had one master database. However, vertical scaling comes with some serious drawbacks. You can add more CPU, RAM, etc. to your database server, but there are hardware limits. If you have a large user base, a single server is not enough. Greater risk of single point of failures. The overall cost of vertical scaling is high. Powerful servers are much more expensive. Very valid all points. So, what is the answer here? Now, the answer here is horizontal scaling, and more importantly, horizontal scaling basis demand. Horizontal scaling, also known as sharding, is the practice of adding more servers. The figure below compares vertical scaling with horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling, we are adding more servers of the same size, but vertical scaling, we are going from server of size X to 2X to 4X. Now you see it's not a linear growth when you're doing vertical scaling. If server with XYZ config, or say server with X resources cost you some amount, then 2x will cost 2x of that. 4x will not cost just 4x, it will be much more. So it keeps increasing at an exponential rate. And also it is very hard. There is no concept of scaling down as such, or scaling down or reducing basis demand in vertical scaling. So what sharding does? Now sharding here separates large databases into smaller, more easily managed parts called shards, pieces. Each shard shares the same schema, though the actual data on each shard is unique to that particular shard. Okay. Figure below shows an example of sharded databases. User data is allocated to a database server based on user IDs. Anytime you access data, a hash function is used to find the corresponding shard. In our example, user ID mod4 is used with the hash function. If the result equals to 0, shard 0 is used to store and fetch data. If it hash comes out to be 1, then stored in shard 1, shard 2, shard 3, and so on. Alright. Now, because we are using a mod4, that's what this image is trying to depict. If the user ID is 0, mod 4, 0, 4, 8, 12, all of the data will be in user 2. So think of it like 25% of the database in shard 0, the rest quarter in shard 1, shard 2, and shard 3, and so on. Alright. Now, okay. So these four are the shards, and each one is like 25% of the database. Alright. Now, the most important factor to consider when implementing a sharding strategy is the choice of the sharding key. Sharding key, known as partition key, consists of one or more columns that determine how data is distributed among all the shards that we create. As shown in figure above, user ID is the sharding key. A sharding key allows us to retrieve and modify data efficiently by routing database queries to correct database. Okay, makes sense. When choosing a sharding key, one of the most important criteria is to choose a key that can evenly distribute data. Because there is no point of building shards if all of your traffic is still going to go to one or two shards. So yeah, the sharding key or the partition key should be something that uniquely identifies. So definitely do not keep your sharding key on a random UID based column. So yeah, sharding is a great technique to scale the database, but it is far from a perfect solution. It introduces complexities and new challenges to the system, such as following: resharding data. Resharding data is needed when First, a single shard could no longer hold more data due to rapid growth. Certain shards might experience shard exhaustion faster than others due to uneven data distribution. When shard exhaustion happens, it requires updating the sharding function and moving data around. Sharding function is similar to the one that we use here, user ID mode 4. That is the sharding function. So if this is leading to whatever is our criteria, some abstract criteria, let's assume. And now if this hashing function is leading to all of the data going to say the
The
shard
shard
that
that
is
is
here,
here,
if it
if
is
it is
leading
leading
to
to
all of
all
the
of the
data
data
going to
going to
the
the
shard
shard
number
number
one
one
itself,
itself,
then
then
shard
shard
exhaustion
exhaustion
might
might
happen,
happen,
and
and
then we
then we
might have
might
to
have to
update this
update this
whole
whole
thing.
thing.
So
So,
yeah,
yeah,
so
so
that
that
is
is
an
an
issue
issue
that
that
we
we
run
run
into.
into.
All
All
right.
right.
Now
Now,
moving
moving
on.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sharding
sharding
exhaustion
exhaustion
happens.
happens.
All right.
All right.
Consistent
Consistent
hashing
hashing
is
is
the
the
which will
which
be
will be
discussed.
discussed.
Okay.
Okay.
Consistent
Consistent
hashing
hashing
is the
is the
process
process
where
where
it
it
is
is
evenly
evenly
distributed.
distributed.
Now,
Now,
this is
this is
what
what
will
will
come
come
later
later
on.
on.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on
Moving on
for
for
now.
now.
Scalability
Scalability
problem.
problem.
There is
There is
also
also
called a
called a
hotspot
hotspot
key
key
problem.
problem.
Excessive
Excessive
access
access
to a
to a
specific
specific
shard
shard
could
could
cause
cause
server
server
overload.
overload.
Imagine
Imagine
data for
data for
Katy
Katy
Perry,
Perry,
Taylor
Taylor
Swift,
Swift,
or
or
some
some
other
other
stars.
stars.
For
For
social
social
application,
application,
that
that
shard will
shard
be
will be
overwhelmed
overwhelmed
with
with
read
read
partitions. For
partitions. For
example,
example,
on
on
Instagram,
Instagram,
after
after
Virat
Virat
Kohli
Kohli
scores a
scores a
century.
century.
So
So,
yeah,
yeah,
to
to
solve this
solve this
problem, we
problem,
may
we may
need to
need to
allocate a
allocate a
shard
shard
for
for
each
each
celebrity.
celebrity.
Each
Each
shard
shard
might
might
even
even
require
require
further
further
partition
partition
among
among
themselves
themselves
based on
based
the
on the
traffic.
traffic.
Join
Join
and
and
denormalization.
denormalization.
Once a
Once a
database
database
has been
has been
sharded
sharded
across
across
multiple
multiple
servers,
servers,
it is
it is
hard to
hard to
perform
perform
join
join
operations
operations
across
across
database
database
shards.
shards.
A
A
common
common
workaround is
workaround
to
is to
denormalize the
denormalize the
database
database
so
so
that
that
queries
queries
can be
can be
performed in
performed
a
in a
single
single
table.
table.
So
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So
now
now
in the
in the
figure
figure
below,
below,
we
we
shard
shard
databases to
databases to
support
support
rapidly
rapidly
increasing
increasing
data
data
traffic.
traffic.
At the
At the
same
same
time,
time,
some of
some
the
of the
non-relational
non-relational
functionalities are
functionalities are
moved
moved
to a
to a
NoSQL
NoSQL
data
data
store
store
to
to
reduce the
reduce the
database load.
database load.
Reference
Reference
number
number
14 is
14
an
is an
article
article
that
that
covers
covers
use
use
cases
cases
of
of
NoSQL. All
NoSQL.
right.
Alright,
This is
this
the
is the
updated
updated
diagram.
diagram.
DNS,
DNS,
CDN,
CDN,
load
load
balancer,
balancer,
CDN
CDN
tilts.
tilts,
What is
what
the
is the
load
load
balancer or
balancer or
what is
what
the
is the
geo
geo
fencing that
fencing that
needs to
needs
be
to be
done?
done.
Then
Then
this
this
is
is
the
the
EC
EC
one is
one is
the
the
cloud or
cloud
the
or the
network
network
geographical
geographical
area
area
where the
where the
request is
request is
going
going
message
message
queue
queue
workers,
workers,
databases
databases
which are
which are
sharded,
sharded.
then there
Then
are
there are
cache,
cache,
workers,
workers,
NoSQL,
NoSQL,
logging,
logging,
tools,
tools,
metrics.
metrics.
Now,
Now,
scaling a
scaling a
system is
system
an
is an
iterative
iterative
process.
process.
As
As
I
I
also
also
said at
said
the
at the
starting of
starting
the
of the
live
live
stream,
stream,
that for
that for
example, I
example, I
started
started
from
from
local.
local.
Then when
Then
it
when it
worked,
worked,
I
I
hosted
hosted
semi-hosted
semi-hosted
it
it
on
on
a
a
N10
N10
workflow. Then
workflow. Then
I
I
moved
moved
to
to
cloud.
cloud.
So
So
iterating on
iterating
what
on
we
what
have
we have
learned in
learned
this
in this
chapter
chapter
could get
could
us
get us
far.
far.
More
More
fine-tuning
fine-tuning
and
and
new
new
strategies are
strategies are
needed to
needed to
scale
scale
beyond
beyond
millions of
millions of
users.
users.
For
For
example,
example,
you
you
might
might
need to
need to
optimize your
optimize your
system
system
and
and
decouple the
decouple the
system
system
to
to
even
even
smaller
smaller
services.
services.
All
All
that
that
technique
technique
learned in
learned
this
in this
chapter
chapter
should
should
provide a
provide a
good
good
foundation to
foundation to
tackle new
tackle new
challenges.
challenges.
To
To
conclude this
conclude this
chapter,
chapter,
we
we
provide a
provide a
summary of
summary of
how we
how we
scale
scale
our
our
system to
system to
support
support
millions of
millions of
users.
users.
Keep
Keep
web
web
tiers
tier
stateless
stateless
so that
so that
horizontal
horizontal
scaling can
scaling
be
can be
possible.
possible.
Build
Build
redundancy at
redundancy at
every
every
tier.
tier.
Cache
Cache
data
data
as
as
much as
much
you
as you
can.
can.
Support
Support
multiple
multiple
data
data
centers.
centers.
Host
Host
static
static
assets in
assets in
CDN.
CDN.
Scale your
Scale your
data
data
tier by
tier by
sharding.
sharding.
Data
Data
tier
tier
basically
basically
means your
means your
databases.
databases.
Split
Split
tiers
tiers
into
into
individual
individual
services.
services.
Monitor your
Monitor your
systems
systems
and
and
use
use
automation
automation
tools
tools
and
and
have
have
logging.
logging.
Definitely
Definitely
have
have
good
good
logging,
logging,
especially
especially
when
when
you
you
are
are
working in
working in
a
a microservice
microservice-based
based
system
system
where
where
there are
there are
different
different
teams or
teams or
different
different
individuals who
individuals
are
who are
handling
handling
specific
specific
business use
business use
case
case
implemented
implemented
into
into
a
a
service
service
which you do not have a deeper context, you just have a you are just one of the microservices in the flow, then you need to have distributed logging, and you should be great at CI and continuous testing, CI and CD. So congratulations on getting this far. And GG,
Kudos to
kudos to
you
you
as
as
well
well
for
for
following the
following the
stream
stream
so
so
long with
long with
me.
me.
So,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's
been
been
chapter
chapter
one
one
of
of
system
system
design
design
interview.
interview.
And
And
these are
these
the
are the
reference
reference
materials.
materials.
I
I
am
am
thinking
thinking
that
that
I
I
could
could
do
do
a
a
separate
separate
series
series
where I
where I
go
go
over
over
all of
all of
these
these
references
references
because
because
what
what
I
I
have
have
observed
observed
is,
is,
while
while
in my
in my
opinion
opinion
at
at
least,
least,
that
that
while
while
what we
what
have
we
read
have
so
read
far
so far
is
is
crucial,
crucial,
but
but
at
at
the
the
same
same
time,
time,
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
deeper
deeper
learning or
learning or
actual
actual
learning
learning
is the
the
one
one
that
that
makes you
makes you
question
question
things,
things,
the
the
one
one
that
that
lights up
lights
a
up a
bulb in
bulb in
your
your
brain when
brain when
you
you
actually
actually
dwell or
dwell or
dive
dive
deeper
deeper
than
than
more
more
than the
than the
surface
surface
stuff.
stuff.
That's what
That's what
happens when
happens
you
when you
go
go
over
over
these
these
actual
actual
RCA
RCA
blogs or
blogs or
tech
tech
blogs
blogs
on the
on the
caching
caching
strategies or
strategies or
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
other
other
important things
important
that
things
I've
that I've
mentioned here.
mentioned here.
I'm
I'm
thinking of
thinking of
doing a
doing a
separate
separate
series
series,
which I
which
can
I
call,
can
say,
call, say,
system
system
design
design
reference
reference
read
read
through,
through,
read
read
along.
along.
And
And
yeah,
yeah,
I
I
will be
will be
doing
doing
them.
them.
Just
Just
let me
let me
know in
know
the
in the
comments
comments
that
that
if you
if you
wanted to
wanted to
do
do
that,
that,
and
and
if
if
yes,
yes,
which
which
one
one
should I
should
do
I
it
do
in
it
the
in the
order,
order,
or do
or
you
do you
want
want
any
any
specific
specific
ones
ones
that I
that I
should do?
should do?
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
that
that
has
has
been
been
chapter
chapter
one.
one.
Thanks a
Thanks a
lot
lot
for
for
watching.
watching.
If
If
you,
you,
I
I
am
am
doing,
doing,
I'm
I'm
very
very
new to
new to
this.
this.
I'm
I'm
doing it
doing
for
it
the
for the
first
first
time.
time.
So
So
any
any
feedback is
feedback is
highly
highly
appreciated.
appreciated.
So
So
let me
let me
know
know
if
if
you
you
have
have
liked
liked something,
something, and
and
especially if
especially
you
if you
didn't
didn't
like
like
anything,
anything,
if I
if
can
I can
change my
change my
style,
style,
if
if
there
there
are
are
some
some
production
production
quality or
quality or
audio
audio
issues or
issues or
something
something
else
else
in
in
here.
here.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's
the
the
first
first
chapter of
chapter
this
of this
book,
book,
and
and
I'll
I'll
be
be
going
going
for
for
the
the
second
second
chapter
chapter
pretty
pretty
soon.
soon.
So yeah,
So yeah,
thanks a
thanks
lot.
a lot.
Okay,
Okay,
bye
bye
bye.
bye.